Hey folks, this is Taylor Ursula of That's So Pisces, and it's time to talk about Virgo season. Where has time gone this year? I feel like we have nothing to show for it, and yet it's almost September. Let's talk about it. So this Virgo season is going to be an interesting one. The sun moves into Virgo, and moments later, maybe not moments, maybe a couple hours. Either way, same day, Mercury is going to station retrograde in Virgo. Mercury in Virgo is at home and is ruling the sun in Virgo, which means that most of Virgo season is going to be a retrograde season. Not unlike the way Leo season was very Venus retrograde. This one will not be as relationally painful, perhaps, as the Venus retrograde has been in Leo. Mercury, again, is at home in Virgo, and so it may not feel quite as tumultuous, catastrophic, missed deadlines, like whoopsie. It may not feel as chaotic as other Mercury retrogrades when Mercury is out of its own sign. So, that being said, we are definitely moving through the first 3 weeks or so of Virgo season under the rule of a planet that is retrograde. So the very first full day of Virgo season, we have our first quarter moon. It seems rude to have a test when we just got here and the teacher is retrograde, but okay. We'll talk a lot more about this in the first quarter moon in Sagittarius video, but something to note at this first quarter moon is that Mars will be trining Pluto. So where we are kind of in retrograde vibes, we're also getting a deeper understanding of what's going on, perhaps. Maybe we're not seeing external results just yet. Maybe we're still looking for kind of what the final details might look like. But Mars in this trine to Pluto toward the end of both of these Earth signs, with Pluto retrograde currently, we may be getting clearer on kind of what power is being activated within us, what we are actively working to clear out. Mars is kind of a tinkerer in Virgo, and so it may be that we've been practicing something that's allowing us to step into some new power, some new strength, some new sense of self that we haven't yet, and that might be empowering for us. On Sunday the 27th, we have the sun in Virgo walk into that same opposition to Saturn that both Mars and Mercury did earlier in the summer. So again, we're feeling a little tested at the beginning of this Virgo season. We're feeling a little, why won't you let me through? We might feel like we are just getting to work on some of the details. Again, Mercury is retrograde, ruling this whole Virgo season for the most part. And so we might not feel the same way we usually do in Virgo season. We might feel like we're still needing some more information. That Saturn and Pisces opposition may feel like you don't have enough for the big picture, right? Maybe think about what those oppositions from Mars and Mercury were like, and think about perhaps what the sun might be bringing up for us in a sense of, I don't know, stepping into owning that restriction or figuring out how to kind of look that restriction in the face, right? Maybe we're not getting past it, but maybe we're actually able to see it now more clearly or understand why it's there. On the same day, Mars moves into Libra. Okay, so we've been talking about how Mars has been ruling the North Node in Aries since mid-July, and it hasn't been able to see it from Virgo, which is an inconjunct sign. Now that Mars is stepping into Libra, which is technically a sign of its detriment, but it's able to see both the South Node and the North Node now from this place. So there is something here that Mars is able to at least gain clarity. Also, while Mars is in Libra, it may not have necessarily the individualistic power that a Mars in Aries does, but it is someone who is able to and interested in advocating for those who don't have those same access points, those who don't get their voices heard. And so this may be a time where we're able to kind of activate something through the lens of community care, through the lens of activism, through the lens of advocating for groups that we're a part of, perhaps. And this all connects to whatever Mars is leading us toward in the Aries North Node. So whatever Mars is up to in the next 6 weeks or so, especially since Mars will also meet the South Node, kind of snipping away some of those old cords in order to free us up to get to the North Node, we might see more direct results of our actions, kind of leading us toward who we are becoming as individuals. Not individualists, but individuals, right? Just people, because we are a person. We are a person. Okay, well, anyway, said the Pisces. So we will have the vantage point now of recognizing where kind of fighting on behalf of others also allows us to activate something important within ourselves. We'll see more of that as Mars gets closer to the South Node itself. On Monday the 28th, Uranus stations retrograde at 23 degrees of Taurus, and this is an outer planet that moves slowly. It's been hanging out in Taurus for several years now, but we may regroup on some of our kind of outer self ideas, right? Uranus is said to represent genius. And so where we have kind of insight lurking just beyond our consciousness, we may be able to kind of hone in what's been opened up for us in this current year's cycle of what Uranus has been bringing up, especially since Uranus has been so heavily involved in the squares to Venus, right? We've had trines from Mars and Mercury to Uranus, so we might be revisiting some of those things, and we'll likely feel this the most intensely as Uranus stations. On Wednesday the 30th, we have our full moon in Pisces. Now, this is maybe looking like a sweeter full moon than some of the more recent ones we've had. I remember the Aquarius full moon brought us some tension, brought us a little alienation perhaps. And so this Pisces full moon will meet with Saturn, and we'll talk all about that in the Pisces full moon video, but know that the moon meets with Saturn before it reaches fullness, and so there may be some kind of big picture understanding of what Saturn's been doing for us or to us, however that's felt for you individually. And like I said about the sun opposing Saturn at the beginning of Virgo season, we may feel a sense of coming full circle with whatever that Saturn influence is. Reconciling it, making peace with it, understanding the role that it's played in the bigger picture, something about making peace with and perhaps letting go of, or just allowing it to kind of be what it is in the fullness of it all. On Sunday the 3rd, we have Venus station direct. Venus will be direct. Oh my gosh, it's been not even the typical length of a Venus retrograde, which is 40 days. It's been 44 days, okay? This one was longer. For why? More tests. It's Virgo season. This is what we signed up for, I guess. Venus is stationing direct at 12 degrees. We will begin the patient journey in moving through that shadow period, moving back to understanding what all of this retrograde period time was about, getting clear on what resources we need moving forward, what relationships we are committed to moving forward, which ones make us feel good, what's allowing us to be ourselves without adding extra to that, right? So just getting clear on and being able to move through now everything that's been brought up in this time. Now, of course, the day after Venus stations direct, Monday the 4th, Jupiter will station retrograde. Not before Mercury retrograde trines Jupiter. So there's an interesting little thing happening here. Mercury is the last conversation that Jupiter has before stationing retrograde, and then promptly stations retrograde. We'll talk more about this in the 3rd quarter moon in Gemini video, because that moon will be between conversations to Jupiter. But this is a time where we might be kind of, again, like narrowing this focus, bringing in some of these Jupiter themes, allowing us to kind of deflate some of whatever expectations came up in this Jupiter period, since Jupiter's been in Taurus since May, that has maybe disappointed, not really come to fruition, make us feel a little more kind of emotionally expectant of things than what's actually coming to fruition. So we might be able to kind of hone in on these things, reframe, begin that process of narrowing down what's actually for us and what allows us to live up to something that's important to us while taking on a role that maybe inspires or guides others. Jupiter being a social planet, right? On Wednesday the 6th is our inferior cazimi. This is when Mercury is retrograde and meets up with the sun, and this is the same day as the third quarter moon in Gemini. So this might be a really insightful time. Again, we'll talk all about this in the third quarter Gemini poll video, but this is where we might start to get some of those answers. This is where we might start to be able to eliminate some of the options that have been open-ended for this whole summer. We've just had all these tabs open of like what might come to be, and we might be able to close some of those tabs, freeing up some of that mental space, literally Gemini, right? So wherever that is in our charts, we might be able to start eliminating some of the options that no longer make sense to us, no longer are viable, and start to actually just move forward in some way. On Friday the 8th, we have the sun move into trine Jupiter retrograde in Taurus. And so we will start to see how we can move forward, right? The sun doesn't move backwards, the sun only moves forward. So we can start to see where there's a pathway toward who we're becoming now as Jupiter retrograde starts to eliminate some of the excess of what we've desired or been offered at this time, and start to just allow us to kind of start to move into what's coming up. It's a bit of a quiet week until we have our Virgo new moon. Taking place on Thursday the 14th, this new moon feels very promising. First, this new moon will meet with Mercury, who is a day shy of stationing direct. So moving quite slowly now, Mercury has honed in on what lessons have come up and what we've needed to move through. Mercury is ready to begin implementing some of the ideas that we practiced while Mercury was retrograde, starting to move through some of those questions that came up for us, starting to provide answers to those things. And so we might feel, even though Mercury's still retrograde at the time of this new moon, we may start to feel a sense that we're getting clarity. We might start to get a sense that things are starting to make sense and that we are getting an idea of some action steps that we can start to implement. At the very least, we're getting clear on, again, what we don't want, since we cleared out so much at that third quarter moon in Gemini. And we are sitting with some of the tools and some of the practices that we've been working on in this time, and we are feeling a bit more steady with them. We're feeling a bit more integrated in what we've learned. Maybe we're starting to sharpen some of those skills. So we are feeling kind of ready at this new moon, I think, to root in to what's happening now. The moon also trines Uranus at this time. So this new moon being trine to Uranus also shows us where whatever we've learned in this retrograde time is kind of opening us up to deeper insight. Things that, again, were waiting in the wings, as I described about Uranus earlier, things that have been kind of just out of reach, now kind of beginning to be channeled downward in this new moon. This new moon will oppose Neptune at 26 degrees of Pisces, currently retrograde as well. And so we may feel some sense of illusion or delusion coming up as we are getting clear on what these intentions are. And it might just be a sense of, will this ever live up to what I dream it is, right? That Pisces vibe of everything is much more fantastic in the unreal, and you'll never be the vision you carry. Leave me alone. Just let me have something, okay? And so we may feel just a moment of doubt or disappointment about what we currently have access to Virgo-wise, tangibly, Earth-wise, and what we want, or what we think we want, or what we've been told we want, right, in Neptune, because Neptune is the lie, whatever that means to us in that Pisces part of our chart. We are certainly being brought into the place where we allow fantasy to mingle with truth and whatever consequences that brings about. Positive, negative, neutral, some of all of it, right? So we're just kind of being exposed to the fact that that looming presence may always be there, but I think we can still find our way into, again, rooting into what we do currently have and trusting that knowing that, again, Mercury is stationing direct the next day, and just trusting that we have what we need right now. On Friday the 15th, we have Mercury station direct. Okay, yay. So we're stepping out of that feeling of being tested. We're stepping out of that feeling of not knowing or not having the answers. And we are starting to just root into the now and figure out what is available to us at this time that we can start working with. On the same day, the sun trines Uranus, all these trines to Uranus. Okay, so we're integrating, right? We are seeing what the moon just saw with Uranus, right, at the new moon, and we're having the sun then step into that and bring into consciousness and into the daylight what those kind of intuitive possibilities that came through the moon might look like in real time. On Saturday the 16th, we have Venus direct squaring Jupiter retrograde in Taurus. Remember that Venus is ruling Jupiter from Leo currently while also squaring it. Now, this first square happened while Jupiter was direct on June 11th. The second square happened while Venus was retrograde on the last day of Leo season. So the day before this video talks about, the day before Virgo season began. So this is now the third and final square between these two planets. Jupiter is, again, currently retrograde. So, what does Venus have to say to Jupiter? What have those themes been for you? Where did we maybe take on more than we ended up having the resource to manage? Where did we bite off more than we could chew? Where did we step into something really big that we have been testing out, trying on, and we're now getting clear on what it means to us? Where have we stepped into a sense of abundance, perhaps, or a sense of living in a larger way, right? Venus, again, ruling that Jupiter being a social planet, and Venus having gone through this underworld journey now. Perhaps what that initial square brought up for us is something that we thought we wanted then, something that we thought was for us, something that we felt was really important, something that we expected to come about. And now that Venus is direct going into the same square, we are very different people. So how we respond to that Jupiterian presence, that, again, social influence of expectation, opportunity, responsibility socially, may be completely different now. Perhaps that's part of what Jupiter's retrograde is revealing to us and what we're seeing as Venus starts to move through this shadow period that she just traveled back through. On Tuesday the 19th, we have the sun oppose Neptune. So everything that I said about the moon opposing Neptune just a few days before, we see come up with the sun. And we have this transit once a year. The sun in Virgo, any planet hanging out in Virgo, is trying so hard to manage things in the tangible realm. Everything in Pisces is trying to expand beyond the physical and experience everything out there, experience the collective, experience the mythical, right? And so both of these signs are trying to deal with reality and other. And Virgo is said to be the practical one, but being practical is also a means of escape. It's also a means of trying to control that which feels beyond our control. And Pisces simply is the expression of what it is to try to be free of that, try to be free of the mundane. And so we think of Pisces as the escape artist, but don't let Virgo off the hook so quickly. Now, what we see in this opposition, quite literally, because it's the sun, is this yearly check-in of how do I feel about how I'm managing things, wherever that Virgo-Pisces axis lives in your chart. How do I feel about trying to manage the world that I live in? How do I feel, Pisces, about what I do and what I embody, Virgo? And what does it mean to me at the end of the day? What do I feel able to release at this time in the sense of what I expect or what I envision? and however real I think I'm able to make that at this time. Kind of some existential questions, kind of some big picture vibes. Luckily, it's just a day, and if there are things that come up on this day that are triggering or deeply worrying to you, try to take a deep breath and know that the next day we have the Sun trine Pluto. When the Sun trines Pluto, we again move into kind of the depths of ourselves, and we come to deeper understanding of what we have power over, what we have control over, what power looks like for us, whatever has power over us, right? So all of these things become clear, especially in a trine to the Sun, because the Sun, again, is what we're becoming every day, and it shows us, illuminates with the light, what has been kind of brought to the surface in the depths of us. So this trine may help us kind of process all of the feelings that come up in the opposition to Neptune. There's stuff that we can't reconcile in that opposition to Neptune. There are things that we have to sacrifice in that opposition to Neptune. Pisces and Neptune are about sacrifice, and they are trans-Saturnian energies. So they are beyond the world that we know and feel and can touch and can actually experience in a physical body. So there are some things that we do have to surrender to just being spiritual, just being mythical, just being magical, knowing that we can't actually ground all of it on earth. Similar to cooking, we start with ingredients and we never end up with the exact volume that we start off with. There's always something lost in the process. Eggshells, right? Stems of vegetables. We never get the full product. There's always something that must be let go and hopefully composted in some way. And that might be what we're able to do with this Sun trine to Pluto. Pluto is a great composter, okay? So it might be that Pluto helps us just step through that feeling of disappointment or grief that we carry in that opposition and allow us to recognize what we do have the power to do in this moment and how far we have come into stepping into and developing and owning that power. And that trine to Pluto is the last major aspect of Virgo season. It's 2-3 days later that we enter Libra season, and we'll have a whole host of transits to talk about then. But let's go ahead and pull some cards, see what's coming to the surface, see what we're integrating. There's so much earthiness in this season that's happening, but earthiness that is both the mundane earth as well as like the deeper powers of the earth that are unseen that we're able to tap into this month. So let's go ahead and pull some cards. Go ahead and check out your sign in the text below, and you can click on your timestamp, and I will meet you there. We will read for your sign and see what the cards have in store for you this season. See you there. Okay, here we go. So a quick reminder, a refresh, or letting y'all know if you're new. We are looking at the Chariot as the card of the year. That's 2023 numerologically, and we're looking at this vibe. And I like to break down each season's card and get a sense of how this card's themes play into the overall card of the year. So the Chariot being our vessel, and we want our conscious and unconscious to be aligned so that we are steering in one direction and not being guided by opposing or conflicted forces. And the Hermit, our card for Virgo season, asking us to go within and seek the answers within us rather than looking outward for insight. And that's very appropriate for this Virgo season being ruled by a Mercury retrograde in its own sign. It makes a lot of sense that we're going within for much of this period, or at least we are reconsidering, and we may be wanting to go within to know what we know within us, right? If look, 7 planets are retrograde now, when we talk about Mercury and Jupiter, it's a lot of planets, so it makes so much sense that outside doesn't have the answers for us. It's now time for us to go within into this kind of magic altar, sacred magical space, and to reacquaint ourselves with our landscape. And that certainly helps us You know, we're doing the intellectual or some of the mental reflecting, and that's helping us get a sense of where instinctually and emotionally we are out of sync with ourselves. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Hello, Virgo. Let's talk about your season, shall we? So, as we look at Virgo season, we've got the sun, the new moon, and Mercury retrograde all taking place in your first house of self, how you move through the world. We've got Mars finishing up in your first and moving into your second house of my resources, my skills, my talents, my values. We have these trines happening to Pluto retrograde currently in your fifth house of children, self-expression, play, and affection. We have the full moon in Pisces, as well as those oppositions to Saturn and Neptune happening in your seventh house of one-on-one relationships, business partners, romantic partners, friends, as well as open enemies. Okay. We have the North Node in Aries moving through your eighth house of contracts, shared resources, and psychological makeup. We've got Jupiter stationing retrograde as well as Uranus stationing retrograde in your ninth house of faraway travel, philosophy, higher learning, and belief systems. And lastly, we've got Venus finishing up her retrograde in your 12th house of solitude, of karma, what it all means in the end to me, and mental health. Okay, so we're going to see how these cards that we're going to pull play into this broader chariot year and how the Hermit is inviting you inward. So maybe we're getting a sense of what the Hermit is inviting you into reflect on. Okay, let's pull a few cards and see what we got here. And as always, we've got our fun fluorite dice here, and we're going to give those a roll and see what else we need to know about this time. Okay. And here we go. Ah, lovely, lovely. Okay, a little bit of water, a little bit of fire, a little bit of air, and some, oh, how nice. Okay, cute that we are bookended by these court cups. Okay, so we've got the Queen of Cups over here showing us that perhaps some of what we're moving into, some of what we're moving to explore inwardly, is about our current emotional landscape, and specifically how well are we currently holding space for our own emotions. I love that the Queen's at the beginning and the King's at the end, because the King is where we move into holding space for other people's emotions. And so we're not starting off this way, we're kind of building up to, ramping up to playing this role. Okay, so we're taking a look at what does my emotional landscape look like? Is this water flowing? Is there kind of like a blockage in the tap? Is there some debris? What other metaphors can I use here? Is there something holding up the flow? Is there something preventing me from being in full alignment with these feelings and being able to hold space for them in a way that allows me fullness? Okay, so what a beautiful question, right? All of this is happening in your first house, but we're looking at your seventh house as well. We're looking at that 12th house of mental health. And so maybe Venus up there has been a little fried out, has been feeling really disconnected from other people, right? The 12th house is not a space where other people come to hang out, okay? That's where we are with our maker, we are with our creator or our universe. We are sort of reflecting on what we think things mean, right? I'll use the expression I often use with the 12th house, which is if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, did it make a sound? That's a very 12th house vibe. You're the only one in there. So whatever happens in there isn't really seen by the world. And that can be really magical, right? Everything I said in the transit portion of the video where we talked about Neptune and that needing to reconcile that some things are just meant to be in the ether, just sort of meant to remain mythical and they can't all be translated. That's a lot of what that 12th house space feels like too. Not everyone gets to experience the magic that you see in that 12th house space. And how okay are you with that right now? Okay, so, and like what is lost in that process, right? We've talked a lot about Venus being kind of stressed in this time, stressed in this period of being dried out, fried out, and kind of on her own right now. So at what cost has Venus been alone? Okay, so let's tune in. Let's check in with our emotions. Let's check in with how well we're holding space for those. And I'm thinking about maybe the Seven of Wands as, that gave me a 5th house vibe just then. My intuition spoke to me. And I'm kind of thinking about all of the trines from the 1st house to the 5th house, that Pluto trine in particular, receiving those trines from the sun, that new moon, as well as Mercury retrograde hanging out there. Well, maybe not while Mercury is retrograde. We'll get that at the end, right? We'll get that in Libra season when Mercury is direct and finally moves through the end of Virgo. So looking at some of those trines and getting a sense of what we are receptive to, what we are ready to change, what we've allowed or have felt pressure us into defending or into being on guard, right? Usually I say this as a card about like, yeah, you got a lot to brag about. And that's absolutely very possible. Okay, we've got action in all of your like houses of self, right? Houses of life, the 1st, the 5th, Uranus and Jupiter up in the 9th. So there's certainly things happening very tangibly, but at the same time, there's something about this that makes me think that maybe you've been in this mode for some time, and maybe that's because Mars has been in your 1st and this has been a little neglected. I'm just getting a feeling, and I'll ask these dice in a moment, but I'm getting a feeling that these have been a little bit at odds. And like, let me know if I'm wrong, okay? That's one translation. It could absolutely be true that you are feeling dope about your emotions, okay? You're like, Venus has been telling me to do this work, and so I feel great, and it's giving me energy to defend things and to like fight off the haters. Okay, that's awesome. I love that for you. So we're observing a spectrum here, okay? And so it's cool. I love the Queen of Swords. I've seen her show up a lot this season, just thinking about what we can do to reflect on how far we've come, to think about how much we've overcome. And yes, the sword suit does come with the weight of trauma, of difficulty, of breaking out of mental traps, okay? It's a difficult suit. I've said that again and again. So the Queen does come with, like, I'll use the phrase again, at what cost? At what cost have I had to evolve like this? But also, we can kind of release the grief. We can kind of acknowledge the grief and recognize that we are really powerful in this moment. We have mastered the mental component of things, or at least we are in the process of mastering that mental component of things. And all of this is sort of contributing to our capacity to be this king. Maybe you are going to meet this king. Sometimes people like to say there's multiple court cards, so these are people you're going to encounter. Okay. If that's the case, maybe you need to get down with holding space for your own emotions before you can encounter these other people. Maybe some part of arriving at the King of Cups is moving through the Queen of Cups, as separate people, perhaps. But I also like to think about these as being different roles, and I love the progression of, can you embody the Queen first before you try to be the king? And I feel like if we do this in a backward order, then we kind of miss out on the groundedness we need to feel to actually harden into this lovely crystal here. So these dice are telling me what? While I roll, I'm going to think a little bit about how this is all playing a part in this broader narrative, what we are invited to retreat within in order to get a sense of where our instincts are out of line. And absolutely, we need our emotions to be grounded in order to know how to listen to our instincts. How can we know that these are out of alignment if we aren't able to allow this to flow? These are both very watery cards. This card represents Cancer, right? So how can I do this deeper instinctual checking if I'm not even able to hold space for kind of like my surface emotions? Yeah, how can I tap into those deeper, more instinctual emotions that like I don't have control over, that I'm not conscious of at this time? If I can't actually root into holding space for the emotions I am conscious of at this time. Okay. Oh, let me flip that. Okay, cool. So all of the things I didn't talk about, but I did have thoughts about. I'm thinking into the future a little bit when Mars moves into your third house, into Scorpio. And so when Mars is hanging out in your second house, being ruled by that Venus in the 12th house that is retrograde, you may remember that's also where the South Node is. And so there is something to be freed up in that second house space. It's the first time that Mars is becoming aware of the North Node that it's ruling, that's hanging out in your 8th house, right? And so this time might be you kind of getting clear on how to make space for these things. And you might be kind of cutting things loose in that second house in terms of what you think you're supposed to have, what you imagine is valuable to you at this time that might be changing, especially if it's founded upon something really superficial or socially instilled in you. And that's Mars ruling that third house. So it kind of makes sense to see this Queen of Swords here. The third house is about the mind, our mentality, and kind of where our ideas originate and how we start communicating those ideas. So Mars, everything Mars is doing is definitely connecting with your third house, and how you kind of are able to process emotions, right? Scorpio is a deeply emotional house. To have as a third house can be very pervasive. I feel very deeply just in my day-to-day world. I move through my neighborhood and I pick up on people's instincts. So then how are you kind of separating that, like theirs from yours, if that makes sense? Okay. And Pisces, I mentioned that 7th house, which is where opposition, the sun will oppose Saturn, as well as Neptune, and the moon will oppose Neptune as well. And so there's something about our interpersonal relationships that we need to consider this month, this period. This absolutely is maybe like emphasizing the role of self and other in these court cards. Perhaps here's me over here, and I like someone needs me to be this over here and I can't until I can focus on this. There's some push and pull between what I need for me and like what's being asked of me right now. Especially, I mean, we're literally looking at the 1st and the 7th houses. So something to consider, okay? And lastly, this Aries North Node. So I just talked about Mars ruling your 3rd house. It's also ruling your 8th house and the North Node. I just mentioned that once it moves into Libra, it's going to be able to see that North Node. It'll be opposite the North Node. So that really emphasizes, again, that idea that it will be releasing something from the South Node in your 2nd house to bring more fullness, awareness, activation into that 8th house space. So a reminder that 8th house space is your shared resources, your kind of who have I signed contracts with, and what do those contracts feel like on a regular basis? Things like your landlord, your lease, whether you're leasing a building, a car, a spaceship, your boss falls into the 8th house, right? So like who signed your paycheck? And also, marriage in like practice, right? 7th house is marriage on paper, and like kind of the taking the action of deciding to be together. And the 8th house is like all of the messiness that happens when you actually merge. Okay, so those are the experiences you're calling in over the next 18 months, and there's a big push in that direction that happens for you during Virgo season. Okay, Virgo, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like, please share, please follow. I'd love to have you tune in next time to hear a little bit more about what Mars is going to be doing in Scorpio once we get to Libra season. So, thank you so much, and I'll see you then. Okay, Libra, let's go ahead and talk about your month ahead forecast. All right, so this Virgo season, we've got the South Node moving through your first house. You might be loosening the bonds on some of the things you've been identifying with hardcore. We have Pluto retrograde in Capricorn in your 4th house of home, privacy, origin stories, land, emotional body. We have the full moon taking place, as well as the sun opposite Saturn, as well as Neptune, taking place in your 6th house of health, time, the body, routine, and service. That means the North Node in Aries is hanging out in your 7th house of one-on-one relationships, be they business, romantic, friend, or open enemy. Jupiter will be stationing retrograde alongside Uranus in your 8th house of deep bonds, shared resources, my boss, my government, my taxes, and my psychological space too. Let's not forget that. And lastly, your chart ruler Venus is finishing up her retrograde in your 11th house of friendship, hopes and dreams for the future, communities, grandchildren. Okay, so let's, I feel one more. Okay, and we are looking at the cards we're about to pull through the lens of the Chariot, which is our card for the year, reminding us that we are realigning conscious and unconscious energies this year in order to make sure that we are actually moving toward where we think we are and not being guided by some deep dark force we don't know yet within us. And the Hermit this month is showing us where we are called within ourselves to tap into kind of our own instincts and intuitions now. Okay, and as always, we've got our trusty fluorite dice here with us, and we'll give those a roll to see what else we need to know about this time. Okay. All right, things are happening, or maybe we're slowing things down. Okay, what a nice little kind of variety here. The World is a major arcana card, but it represents Saturn and it is very earthy, so we'll just act as though that is a pentacle squared. Okay, so we've got a nice balance of energy here. That's nice. Oh, Libra, you would. Okay, so this, this card generally says things are happening quickly. I'm going to go ahead and say probably not, right? I mentioned there's like 11 planets retrograde, just 11-9. So maybe we are reconsidering what we've been doing quickly, what we've had to do with speed, and maybe we are starting to slow things down. On the other hand, let's go ahead and imagine this is fully upright and fully literal. We know that Venus has been tired, okay? We've been talking about it. People have been breaking up, moving apart, just like it's over. And so maybe you are called this season to really like get this out of here, get something out of the way. I didn't state this at the beginning of the video, which is my bad. The sun, the new moon, and Mercury retrograde are all moving through your 12th house of endings. So, okay, that adds a really big layer to this. My bad. So that adds a huge layer to this. This is the time of year where things wind down for you, where you are gearing up for Libra season, which is when the sun crosses your ascendant and really lights up who you are becoming right now. And so right now, as the sun is moving through Virgo in your 12th house, as well as Mercury retrograde ruling all of that, you are probably doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff. You might be categorizing things that have been happening all year, especially in Venus retrograde. You might be categorizing the past month that we've just endured. You might be sending out a bunch of quick messages like, goodbye, F you, I have to go now. That kind of sounded like Taylor Swift. There's something that gets wrapped up for you, and it might feel like it's super, like you just, I'm done. We're good. The world is here, which is a much bigger ending, right? And I mentioned that earth before, these mountains back here. It's a grounding of that. So this is a passionate, that certainly feels like Venus, right? This is a wand energy. These are my missives. This is what I have to say to you. Okay. And then beyond that is a feeling and a rooting into that ending, saying, I am fully conscious of this being done now. And I am recognizing that I am closing a chapter, okay? That's really dope energy. We love to see that. We mentioned that kind of full moon conjunct Saturn in Pisces, right? It meets with Saturn before it is fully full. And so there's something that might be finished at that time. You might say like, okay, I really got a sense that I did everything I could here and I have honored this. That's very Saturnian. I have honored this in some big important way and now I can put it away. And this brings me to this sandwiched 9 of Cups here. And we know that the 9 does come after the 8. Of course, in the 8 of Cups, we walk away from something emotionally that isn't fulfilling to us anymore. And maybe this is, we're sending something out that's passionate. We're sending something out that's important. And now it's still clearing out space, right? These 8s are kind of tidying things up. We are kind of starting to wrap up the suit. So maybe something is ended. Maybe you get a quick download, right? We talked about Uranus and like what those kind of insights, those genius moments, whatever changes have been awaiting you in the wings. There might be something that happens very quickly, and then your ability to call in what's next just becomes very clear because you've done that clearing out. Why is the 7 of Swords here, you say? Well, maybe some of what we're closing out is about feeling fake, okay? I mentioned the first house is holding the North Node right now. We've talked about this forever now, that Venus is retrograde in your 11th house of the future, of what I want for myself down the line. And it might be that you no longer want something for yourself anymore that you thought you really did. And maybe that brings to your attention, oh, that wasn't me. That wasn't for me. It's no longer for me. I am getting a clearer sense of who I am. I'm taking a look. I'm looking at the man in the mirror. Okay. And I'm asking them to change their ways, maybe. I like that. I'm thinking about what I've been hiding from. I'm thinking about what I've been saying yes to that does not suit me anymore. And as soon as I do that, I not only get to release this false self, but I also get to call in the true self. Cool. Oh, that feels like deeply purging. Let's take a look at what these dice have to say. And thinking about, it seems obvious how this connects with these broader cards for the season and the year, respectively. If we've been showing up as something we no longer are, if we are beginning that process of releasing something that was or something that needs to be said, then we are absolutely getting closer to those conscious and unconscious energies being aligned. If we are shedding something false, if we are stepping out of something that isn't meant for us, and we are going within to do so, this definitely feels like your 12th house and all those Virgo planets hanging out in the 12th house going, I know what to do here. I just need to go within, stop listening to other people. Venus is tired. All my friends are like, we're not speaking right now, or like, I'm not doing the things I was for them. I said friends because your 11th house. It might be I'm not honoring a future that I thought I had to. Okay, it could absolutely be something along the lines of what your hopes and dreams have been for the future. And you don't need to hold space for those anymore. And that absolutely frees up this, oh, thank goodness, because you were trying to drive us someplace that we didn't want to go. Like, you know, I think there's so much, maybe I put so much emphasis on what the conscious part is. But really, like, the unconscious instincts may be the ones that are correct, and the conscious instincts are the ones that are socially conditioned or are currently still programmed. And so those instincts are like, please hear us, hear us. Your conscious self is like taking you somewhere we don't want to go. So, okay, cool. Let's see who's here. Uranus. Yes, I mentioned that genius. That makes so much sense. Okay. And that's definitely Uranus hanging out in your 8th house of my psychological instincts, right? And like what's been inherited there that I've like crystallized, and what am I freeing up with Uranus in this space? We've got Scorpio, which is your 2nd house. Whatever Mars is doing. Ooh, let's bring Mars in, since Mars is going to cross the threshold from your 12th house finally into your 1st house. Yes, it's in detriment, but it's still something you're able to act on with agency in the 1st house. And it will see the North Node that it's ruling from your 1st house finally. So you may have been kind of dropping things off, cutting things out that and not really knowing what's going to come next, right? That's part of the Venus retrograde in your 11th house of the future. I know I'm putting things down, but I don't know what I'm supposed to replace them with. I don't really know what is supposed to be happening. Mars moving into your 1st house and ruling that 2nd house of Scorpio might be a time where you get some of that clarity, right? You're like, oh, I've been cutting out these things and it's so I can do this. And like, that's cool for not just perhaps earning more or increasing the financial value of that 2nd house space, but really just getting clear on what those values even look like right now, right? Am I right? Because you're clearing out so much and you're releasing a false self. And so if the conscious self has been steering you towards something that's not for you, then that makes a lot of sense that it's time to evolve those values then. Like, oh, I'm no longer honoring those things. So now what I care about is this. And I expect to see some of that starting to come through. We have 9 here, which is fun. What is happening in the 9th house for you, Libra? That is the other mercurial space, right? So if Mercury is hanging out in your 12th house, retrograde in Virgo, then we have that Mercury ruling your 9th house space, Gemini. So let's imagine that. Ooh, I love this. Okay, this shows me more about the 7 of Swords, since it's a mental house. The 9th house is our beliefs. The 9th house is like higher learning and the people we met when we left home to go find like-minded people to talk about and explore things that we find interesting. The 9th house is where we meet others to create meaning, right? This is why religion and philosophy and college and graduate school are all up here, because we travel to a place to go establish the meaning of something together. So it makes so much sense that everything I just described, we're releasing values, we're releasing false selves, we're releasing false hopes and dreams for the future. That would also have an impact on your philosophy and your perspective of what things mean, right? The 12th house is like what things mean at the end of the day, or like at the end of life, or like at the end of it all, right? Me and my maker. The 9th house is like, what does it mean when we talk about that stuff? What is it? How do I translate those things? So I expect that there is some language coming to you. There's some deeper connection to some new philosophies as you're stepping out of this false self, letting go of those hopes and dreams that are no longer yours, and getting a sense of, oh, what does that open me up to in the 9th house to start thinking about, believing, feeling, connecting with other people about. I love that for you. Okay, so, all right, Libra, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like, please share it, and please subscribe. I would love to have you come back and watch your season unfold. So, thank you again, and I'll see you then. Okay, Scorpio, let's take a look at your month ahead forecast. So looking at Virgo season, we have Pluto retrograde, moving through your 3rd house of the mind, my immediate environment, my neighborhood, my siblings. we've got the full moon as well as an opposition to Saturn and those oppositions to Neptune happening in your 5th house of self-expression, of affection, of children and play. We have the North Node in Aries moving through your 6th house of health, body, routine, and time. Jupiter and Uranus both stationing retrograde in your 7th house of one-on-one relationships, business partners, romantic, friends, and open enemies. Venus is finishing up a retrograde in your 10th house of reputation, career, legacy. And the Sun, the new moon, and Mercury retrograde are all happening in your 11th house of friends, communities, hopes, and dreams for the future. Lastly, certainly not least, your chart ruler, Mars, is finishing up in that 11th house and moving into your 12th house of endings, of what it all means at the end, of isolation and or solitude, of mental health. Okay, so already getting some ideas about what the Hermit is asking of you. So let's go ahead and pull some cards and we'll see what this month is bringing up for you, and we'll kind of get a sense of how that connects to our broader cards for the season. The Hermit showing us where we are going inside for answers within ourselves, and the Chariot reminding us that we are realigning our conscious and unconscious selves at this time. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, and as always, we've got our fluorite dice here, and we'll go ahead and give those a roll later on to see what else we need to know about this time. Okay. Yeah, feels very Scorpio, doesn't it? Okay. Wow, fascinating. We have kind of a sequence here with a 7, 8, and 9, and then we've got a very interesting balance of cups and pentacles, cups and pentacles. We've got feelings and substance because, of course, Scorpio. So, I love that these are here together in sequence, but not next to each other. We are absolutely focusing on what kind of emotions are influencing what you perceive your options to be at this time. Let me say that again. Because our options, and maybe this is some of what the 11th house is up to, hopes and dreams for the future, whatever we think is possible for ourselves regarding those hopes and dreams for the future, is absolutely colored by what's happened for us in the past. Isn't that your favorite thing to think about, Scorpio? How everything that's in front of you now is just a repeat of everything you've ever seen and felt and been crushed by. Okay, so let's get clear on that this month. That shows me that 11th house activity, that Mercury retrograde, as well as Mars going into your 12th house and kind of going behind the scenes, pulling you kind of back a bit into the hermit hole to kind of reflect on what this experience has looked like for you. What of the past has influenced what you think is possible now? And of course, the information of the past is useful. Our instincts, however, develop in really sharp ways around that information and really color our emotional response to what is happening. And I'm getting this sense that what we think is happening is not what's really happening, okay? So what does it look like for you to examine what feelings of the past have influenced what you think is possible now? I like the 11th house feature of this kind of team building activity. And I like too that we can look at Pluto in your 3rd house, right? So we're kind of linking, I'm seeing some of those trines coming through. We're linking that 11th house of hopes and dreams for the future, as well as community and friendships, to this 3rd house space of my immediate environment, my peers, kind of taking it back to the beginning. So I love that. If we are confronting, and let's say confronting, because we are trying to focus on the most harmful feelings or the most disturbing experiences that have really crystallized what we feel about what we have access to, right? So we're not worrying about the good stuff that has happened. Obviously, that wouldn't be a problem. But as we get clear on that, or as we begin that investigation, perhaps we are called kind of from that 11th house space down to this 3rd house space to reconnect with what is immediately in front of us. Shift out of the future into what is now and get a sense of who you are able to team build with, who you are able to join forces with at this time. If there are friendships that are closing out in that 11th house space, if there are communities that you are stepping out of in that 11th house space, perhaps because you're getting clear on what these emotions have compelled you to engage with, then it's really beautiful to see you kind of rooting back into the simpler parts of interaction and just shifting again out of the future into what's here right now. Let me move through a third house kind of space and get clear on what resources I can mine there. Let me figure out who my peers are currently, if I'm shifting out of community, and figure out who's currently able to build with me. And if this has influenced what I think I have to offer people, maybe I'm getting a sense of, as I confront this, what I actually do have to offer and where it's much more powerful than I imagined. Maybe the flip of that is happening instead or as well, which could be, maybe I thought these people didn't have something I needed. Maybe I didn't think of us as peers before, but I'm getting a sense that we could be now. Okay, cool. So as we do that, as we explore those possibilities, we're absolutely saying goodbye to something, right? That's very much a 12th house chart ruler space. Mars moving through there is kind of like, well, that doesn't mean anything to me anymore, and I don't want to be part of that anymore. And let me just go ahead and cut cords, cut ties with something there. So the 8 of Cups is absolutely an emotional process where we are recognizing what it has meant to us to be here, how beautiful it has been perhaps to see this sunset, how it might be very tempting to stay here because of what's been established. But we also know that we can't hold on to some of these things if we're identifying what's problematic. And maybe it's walking away from grudges you've been holding or like emotions you've been validating that need to be let go of. Let's throw in really quick that the South Node is up there in that 12th house space. So as Mars moves through there and is finally clear on the North Node in your 6th house for the first time since the nodes moved into these signs in mid-July, there's something that you're finally ready to be free of or to part ways with that's been informed by whatever this problematic kind of emotional patterning has told you is something you need to be part of, or something that is worth holding on to, or something that you won't be able to replace this. If I let go of this, I can't replace it. Or if I drop this, then what power do I have, right? Maybe I feel holding on to this is the power that I have. No, we're finding the power elsewhere. So beautiful to end with this 9 of Pentacles, okay? There is a reframing of what is valuable to us, of what we are able to celebrate at this time. And I love the 9 because it's not a 3 of Cups. We're not necessarily out here in these streets partying with other people talking about what we're doing. We're getting a sense of fulfillment within ourselves. We're seeing the bounty of our efforts. We're seeing something add up and pay off in some way, and we are relishing in our success. We are enjoying what's happening there. We are feeling like that's for us, okay? And we are able to really own it. That's beautiful. So I love thinking about how these cards, it's very clear how this weaves into this story. All these instincts and like, I mean, even these are a water and an earth card, okay? So like we're seeing where the emotional instincts and patterns overlap, and we're seeing where kind of going within or going back kind of helps you connect with what resources are tangibly available to you now? Well, okay, here is Scorpio saying literally, yes, it's you. And so I get, you know, that tells me that you are changing how you move through the world, right? Because Mars doing all of that kind of snipping in the 12th house, setting things loose or parting ways with things, is absolutely freeing up space for when it moves into your first house and how you move through the world. We've got 12 here, definitely emphasizing that Mars action. So really pay attention to Mars this season, okay? And let's not forget Venus up there in your 10th house of reputation. We recently had the Venus-Uranus square from your 10th to your 7th house. And maybe there was some sort of interaction with someone that brought up something troubling for you. Even if you're able to rationalize that that event was not going to destroy you or was not going to end you or end something important for you in some way, it still brought up those triggering feelings, right? I'm imagining. I mean, I've heard from some of you that that's what happened. So just going to put it out there. So there's definitely some need to, or I won't say need, maybe as Venus is stationing direct, maybe that conflict or how you think others saw you in that moment, right? Because Venus retrograde, there's like, everyone's looking at me, but I don't have all the tools. And like, this is so embarrassing. And like, please don't look over here. I can't believe I didn't have the right answer for you. And I'm deeply upset. So there's some reframing of how people see you, perhaps, or remembering that Venus is going to be ruling Mars, your chart ruler, as it moves through your 12th house. Letting go of some of those fears, letting go of some of those ideas of how people see you, freeing up whatever emotional attachment you've had to whatever, however people talk about you or what you think people are saying about you or what you think it means, right? And freeing yourself from that. And that's there's kind of a chain of command right there. Venus ruling Mars, Mars ruling your ascendant, and therefore this sort of release, trickle down release, if you will. Okay, Scorpio, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please like it, please share, please subscribe. I would love to have you come back next season and talk about Mars making its way into your first house. All right, so I'll see you then. Hello, Sagittarius. Let's look at your month ahead forecast. All right, as we look at Virgo season, we are looking at Pluto retrograde hanging out in your second house of personal resources, skills, and values. We've got the full moon in Pisces, as well as that opposition to Saturn and those oppositions to Neptune taking place in your fourth house of home, family, origin, and emotional body. We've got the North Node in Aries moving through your fifth house of self-expression, of children, of play, and affection. We have Jupiter as well as Uranus stationing retrograde in your sixth house of time, health, body, and routine. Venus is finishing up her retrograde in your ninth house of faraway travel, foreign cultures, higher learning, philosophy, and religion. We have the sun, the new moon, as well as Mercury retrograde, all happening in your 10th house of reputation, legacy, and career. And lastly, we have Mars finishing up in that 10th house and moving into your 11th house of hopes and dreams for the future, friendships, and communities. Okay. And remembering that what we pull here in a moment is all framed within these two broader cards, revealing to us what of our conscious and unconscious selves we are working to realign right now, and how or where we are going within to explore our kind of inner knowledge and instincts now. Okay, so, okay. Oh, beginnings. Okay. All right. No cups for you, Sagittarius, which, all right. I'm not surprised. So, That's all your private spaces. You're not going to tell anybody about those water spaces, okay? So, absolutely, we've got some beginnings here, and we've got like kind of an entryway into a full phase of something. Okay, so what's going on here? New opportunities, perhaps, new growth, okay? We could say in a, you know, we live in a world where money is necessary. We live in a world where new things are shiny and exciting. Okay, so there's something absolutely like unfurling for you this month. Something is becoming possible for you. I love thinking about that. Maybe we are looking at, I'm thinking about Pluto in the second, something about a new possibility, a new skill, a new idea about something tangible you would like to implement, and absolutely like connected to some, if not the moment of inspiration, so if not something just appearing out of nowhere that you are ready to chase and pursue, then finally like having the time to kind of ground an idea that you've had, something that has been sparked for you recently, finally gaining roots. Okay, I love that. Yes, that makes so much sense. What starts as like the Big Bang turns into plants on Earth. Okay, so you're able to ground something in some sort of tangible way, which makes sense. All the Earth planets are, or rather all your Earth houses are activated right now, right? Jupiter and Uranus have been hanging out in your sixth house of routine, time, the body, health. And Pluto has been moving back into your second house since earlier this summer. So now your 10th house being activated by the sun and moon and Mercury's retrograde, kind of bringing groundedness to something passionate that happens in your houses of life, right? Maybe that North Node in Aries in the fifth house has been generating an idea, but with Mars moving through Virgo, it hasn't really been able to connect because it can't see that North Node. But with the sun and again, Mercury and the new moon moving through that space and connecting with those earthly spaces while Mars moves into Libra and is able to see the North Node, it makes a lot of sense that something that's been hypothetical, something that's been a possibility, is actually able to ground this month. Okay, that's very exciting. The Three of Swords. That's not something we love to see. It makes us think that we're going to experience something painful. I'm drawn to this full moon and the opposition to Saturn, as well as the oppositions to Neptune happening in your fourth house. And of course, that's supported by this Four of Pentacles here, which does show us kind of needing more than we have right now, not having a lot to spare right now, being thirsty, right? If you think about some of the more traditional images of this card, usually there's a figure holding very tightly to the Four of Pentacles, kind of like, please don't take these from me. So there is something being activated in that 10th house, 4th house activity happening this season that might be triggering, that might bring up old wounds, that might bring up pains. Maybe Jupiter and Uranus stationing retrograde in your 6th house have something to do with your time changing, your routine changing, or some physical element of your experience being overhauled, right? Maybe there is something being illuminated at the full moon, since we've talked about it meeting with Saturn on its way, that brings to the surface something you are currently responsible for within your family or within your home. And that's not easy work. When we take responsibility for things in our ancestral line, when we are responsible for elders, when we are bound to and like at the mercy of the home that we live in, the four walls that we live in, absolutely emotional material comes to the surface. That's not easy stuff, and there's not really an outlet or like a proper form of expression for all of it. It kind of just is what it is. So there may be some sort of limitation of the self this month that is highlighted. We have these two kind of contrasting narratives here, and that's why we like astrology, because it holds space for multitudes, right? So there's absolutely something like really big and expansive opening up and also being grounded simultaneously in a way that might feel super positive. And there might also be this experience of feeling limited or feeling responsible in ways that feel heavy or, again, cause us to like enter this catharsis. It's important to have the catharsis though. We have to feel what's happening. If we don't, we continue down the suit of the swords, and nobody likes to do that. Nobody likes to find themselves at the 8 where they're just surrounded by what they've refused to acknowledge that is now, sleeping out of the floorboards and like echoing from the attic. And we certainly don't want to get to the 9 where we are just so overwhelmed and like fully blocked from ourselves. So I think it's important, and I love, we kind of said there's some early phase stuff happening here. It's absolutely important to hold space for and really just acknowledge what happens here and get a sense of what it's uprooting for you, what it's making you feel thirsty for, and maybe what you're feeling thirsty for is able to be solved by this, and maybe they're just processes that are separate, okay? And for some of you, it might be both, and for some, it might be either or like they are fully separate. So let me know what that ends up looking like for you. As I roll these trusty fluorite dice, let's think about how this weaves into the bigger story. Something that has been waiting in the wings to download is really perfect for this hermit vibe of kind of going into the workshop. I'm going into my little ritual space and I'm going to finally start to create a prototype. Okay, and that process helping us become conscious of something that has been unconscious or that has been, again, like looming but hasn't had space, and allowing us to continue doing more of that journey of anchoring. And this portion of the reading absolutely showing us where holding space for those feelings, letting that anxiety maybe ground, or just acknowledging what feels difficult, being a critical part of going within, taking that time, whatever it looks like, and just listening to yourself, getting a sense of what else have I wanted to suppress, or do I need to acknowledge that deepens this work of allowing these instincts to be aligned. Okay. Alrighty. Yes, Virgo, that 10th house, Neptune. Okay, so I see, yeah, that like 4th house, 10th house activity is going to be very strong this month, is possibly going to be triggering this month. I imagine that these entities are squaring your ascendant and descendant line at some point, whether exactly or whether just as the full moon is building, it may come into some intense or confrontational energy with your ascendant, who you are in Sagittarius, and how you get to be in relationship with others in your Gemini 7th house. And so be mindful of that. It might be that things that are happening in the 10th and 4th houses are shaking something happening across your 1st and 7th houses. Just things to be mindful of. The 9th house, Venus. Okay, so Venus has been tired, right? Venus is in your 9th house, trining your ascendant or trining your 1st house, kind of able to see what's possible or not possible from up there. And we talked about Mars moving out of that 10th house space into your 11th house of hopes and dreams for the future. And Venus will be ruling that Mars. And so maybe there's something there about something I've been responsible for is going to limit my capacity to be in that space of hopes and dreams. Maybe there is something that I need to cut out from that space as Venus finishes up this retrograde and decides, I don't believe this anymore, and therefore I don't want to be part of that community, part of that friend group, part of that anchoring that into my future in some way. Maybe there's something that is, again, Mars ruling that 5th house north node from that 11th house once it moves into Libra. There's something freeing, or maybe going your own way, or becoming a leader in some sense. But since the 11th house is hosting the south node right now, I would think that you are pulling away from some of those friendships, pulling away from communities that feel false to you, and especially since it's being ruled by Venus in your 9th house, reframing some of those broader beliefs and belief systems. And there's grief in that too. There's absolutely sadness in recognizing that spaces aren't for you, or that you no longer believe in certain things that you once did. And just, again, kind of going within, holding space for all of that, maybe channeling some of that into what is new and opening up. Okay. Sagittarius, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please like it, please share, please subscribe. I would love to have you come back next season and talk a little bit about what's going on as the sun moves through your 11th house and goes into YOLO mode. Okay, I hope to see you then. Hello, Capricorn. It's our turn. Okay, so as we look at Virgo season, we are looking at Pluto retrograde back in your first house. We thought we were done. We ain't done. There's more. There's more. There's always more when Pluto's involved. We are seeing a full moon, as well as that opposition to Saturn and those oppositions to Neptune, hanging out in your third house of immediate environment, the mind, my peers, my siblings. We have the North Node in Aries in your fourth house of home, origin, family, emotional body. Jupiter and Uranus are stationing retrograde in your fifth house of children, joy, play, pleasure, affection, self-expression. Venus is wrapping up retrograde in your eighth house of shared resources, of psychological complexes, of contracts. We have the Sun, the new moon, and Mercury stationing retrograde in your ninth house of beliefs, higher learning, philosophies, travel. Okay, I think that's it. And last but not least, we've got Mars finishing up in that ninth house and preparing to move into your 10th house of career, reputation, legacy. All right, so as we pull these cards, we'll be framing them within this broader narrative of the Chariot, accompanied by the Hermit this month. The Chariot reminding us that this year we are working to realign our conscious and unconscious selves so that we are steering ahead with integrity and going where we want to go, right? Like going where we're meant to go. And we're doing that work this month through the Hermit, kind of going within ourselves, listening to the answers that we hold, kind of checking our own work, right? Retreating and reassessing. All right, so we also have our handy dandy dice that will be rolling for some further insight. Okay, let's see what we got going on this month. Oh, interesting. Okay. Oh, look at all of these pastels and then just this looming dark red energy. I love Judgment. Judgment's going to be great for us. Okay, so let's look here. We've got some very compelling energy going on here. All right, the Four of Wands makes me think of home, Venus in Aries vibes. The North Node is there now. Maybe there is something happening. Let me speak slower. Maybe there's something happening about home in some way. Maybe there's something lighting up that's calling you towards what is going to be housing what matters most to you. Whether it's literal home, whether it's just thinking about what this sort of fire is that calls you to cultivate a safe space for it. Something's happening in some sort of celebratory way, right? The Four of Wands is, yay, we are gathered here today to fill in the blank. Okay, so something really positive, really beautiful, really, again, celebratory and kind of heartwarming. Heart and hearth is what I'm thinking here. So that's a beautiful way to start. I love the Lovers, right? We've got Mercury retrograde in Virgo in your 9th house, ruling your 6th house space, which is Gemini. And I love looking at the Lovers as reclaiming ourselves, okay? If you've been here before, you've heard me talk about how most readers will say the Lovers is about some sort of soulmate energy or like finding the one you love. Okay, that's totally possible, right? Jupiter and Uranus are stationing retrograde in your 5th house. So perhaps that is what's real. Perhaps you are revisiting some options or revisiting a meet cute, right? Something happened and it's going to happen again. You're going to be able to capture it. Maybe that's what the celebration is about. Maybe you're building a home with someone. Okay, like maybe this is all working together in this way. And the way that I love to talk about the Lovers is a self-finding self. So our conscious self, and you'll see how these really line up together and go hand in hand, which is why they are in sequence. Our conscious self remembering to reclaim our divine self remembering to ground in our conscious self. And maybe that's that 3rd quarter moon in Gemini that I discussed briefly, just like being able to end something that is no longer for us, like our time is changing. Maybe we are making space for different expressions of ourself somehow. But there's something being reunited or being united for the first time here about us and how we like make space for ourselves and how we meet ourselves or how we meet another. And the 10 of Pentacles is a huge is a celebration as well. It's not quite as active as the 4 of Wands celebration. It's more like a feeling complete. It's more like a this is something I'm able to share with others. And that's certainly, again, why like maybe like true love. Okay, maybe true love is happening. That's dope. I would love that. And otherwise, maybe there's something about, you know, if home is changing, whether it's the literal space that we live or what is important to us within these 4 walls that we protect, has to do with what we are meeting or claiming at this time, what sort of merging is taking place. And we are either experiencing some literal fulfillment of this culmination, like, again, I have this to share with everyone I love, and we're able to really just look and reflect on what it's been like to arrive here, and I feel good about sharing this. Or this could be a literal home too. I finally have the home of my dreams. My person or my friends or my community, we came together to make this shared bounty happen. And so we are like reveling in that. Okay, so as that's all kind of happening on the surface, maybe the Lovers is not necessarily surface, but it could be semi-surface, let's say that. As that's happening here, we've got this much bigger process happening. Now, the World is the Saturn card, and Judgment is the card that precedes the World. To get to that ending, to allow something to close, to be finished with something, asks us to first kind of let ourselves be finished. A lot of times we ruminate over things, or we hold on to things, or we refuse to end things because we feel guilty, because we feel like we still have to fix something, because we feel like we didn't know enough at the time. And so like now I have to keep going. I just have to keep putting in that work. And really it's like, no, let's actually take a step back and think about how far we've come from that place and how much we've learned in that time on that road. And let's get clear on who we are no longer, and maybe give ourselves the opportunity to release what we feel beholden to in that way. Why do we hold on to things just because we feel guilty? Because we think that we'll absolve ourselves if we stick around long enough to fix it. Talk to me, Capricorn. Okay, like, I'm committing, I'm gonna do this. Okay, but to what detriment, at what cost are we kind of like preventing that ending, or otherwise refusing to release ourselves from the being on the hook for that thing? Maybe some of this Lovers process aligns with this Judgment process, where as we reclaim whichever part of ourselves is kind of lost right now, we also recognize like, it's not my fault that I lost them, or like I didn't know how to hold on to them before and now I do, and so I can release the like onus of that thing. there's something maybe about moving through this process that finally allows for this judgment. I have done this reclaiming or this meeting of my soulmate, and I have made this move or established these walls and moved into sharing these walls, and that frees me from something over here that's been on me for a long time. Venus is hanging out in your 8th house and finally going to wrap up that retrograde. And I don't know if you're like me as a Capricorn rising, but every Venus retrograde kind of pulls me into some situation where I expected to be accompanied by another who I care deeply for, and that has fallen through for some reason. Whether, you, again, you let me know what that brings up for you. But there is something, maybe even just releasing a version of what we thought this was or what this was, because Venus is trining your 4th house from that 8th house space, that leads to this judgment and allows us to reclaim ourselves. We're going to see what these dice have to say, but it makes a lot of sense to see these cards beneath the Chariot and the Hermit. The Hermit, again, these sort of mercurial cards, or these cards that are affiliated with signs ruled by Mercury, whatever we are reclaiming within ourselves is helping us listen to our instincts more in the Hermit. Maybe going into the Hermit allows us to reclaim this self, right? And of course, all of that adding up to, we don't have any water cards here. You could say Judgment's a kind of watery card. We don't have any like cups or, anything of that nature here. So the emotional component of this might be in that full moon in Pisces, or might be in some of those other communication houses. Let's see what these dice have to say. But maybe Scorpio. Okay. Ooh, and moon. Ha ha ha. I love it when I'm right. Okay. So yes, full moon in the 3rd. That is the house of joy for the moon. The moon loves the 3rd house. That is the house of the goddess for the moon. And this is where we get to connect with people. We get to celebrate that we are kind of in a shared neighborhood, the origins of community, right? We are a village. Perhaps there is some ability to share in something that we are doing together, okay? Right? Like this is sharing with others. Absolutely. So it doesn't need to be a partner. I mentioned like my community bought a house. That would be amazing. I would love that for you. Let's absolutely like combine our resources and like live in the past that is going to be the future. So I love that. And that moon happening in the 3rd house also rules that 7th house space, that Cancer, one-on-one relationships. And so maybe there is something that culminates in this 3rd house that really allows for closeness to occur too. And we're weaving in that 11th house because that's Scorpio for you. Mars rules that space. Mars is finishing up in your 9th house, moving into your 10th house. Maybe we are I mentioned a moment ago, releasing some ideas of what we thought we wanted here, or reframing what we thought this completion looked like. And Mars up there in the 10th house, kind of cutting ties with things that you have felt you had to live up to, traditions you felt you had to honor, some reputation that you felt like you had to uphold, right? Venus in the 8th house is so tired and like done with that. And Mars up there is going to be doing her bidding and kind of cutting away at things. And that's going to free up that 11th house of what's possible for the future. Ooh, I love that. If you are of the Pluto Scorpio generation, then Pluto hangs out in that 11th house and maybe makes it really intense for you to think about what's possible for the future. And maybe this judgment is like, everyone's talking about me. Everyone knows that I did this, or everyone like sees me this way. And so I must see me this way, or, whatever convoluted thing is happening up there. Makes a lot of sense that we see judgment here, sort of freeing us up to move into the future, right? Okay, so thank you, Capricorn, for watching. I so appreciate your time. If you enjoyed this, please like it, please share, please subscribe. I would love to see you come back next season where we can talk about the sun moving through that 10th house space and like what you are freaking done with. Being for others, caring about for some sort of reputational needs, and just like let loose. All right. See you then. Hello, Aquarius. Welcome to your month ahead preview. Okay, so as we look at Virgo season, we are seeing the full moon, as well as that opposition to Saturn and those oppositions to Neptune that we discussed happening in your second house of personal resources, skills, values. We have the North Node in Aries, making its way through your third house of local environments, neighborhood, siblings, the mind. We have Jupiter and Uranus preparing to station retrograde in your fourth house of home, origin, family line, and emotional body. We have Venus finishing up this retrograde in your seventh house of one-on-one relationships, romantic, business, friendly, and antagonistic, those open enemies, right? We have the sun, the new moon, and Mercury stationing retrograde in your eighth house of shared resources, psychological spaces, how we live out our contracts with our loved ones, our landlord, our boss. We have Mars finishing up in your eighth house and preparing to move into your ninth house of philosophy, higher learning, religion, culture, faraway travel. And last but not least, we have Pluto currently retrograde in your 12th house of endings, of karma, of what it all means, of my maker. Okay, so let's get a look at what this month ahead has for you, what Virgo season will be bringing. And as we look at these cards that we're about to pull, we're going to do so underneath the kind of umbrella of these broader narratives going on. The Chariot, the card of the year, reminding us that we are realigning our conscious and unconscious energies. And the Hermit, our card for the season, showing us where we are traveling inward for answers. Okay, pretty perfect for Mercury retrograde. All right, so let's go ahead and get a look. And we also have our fluorite dice here with us today, and we'll be rolling those to get a look at what else we need to know about this time. Okay, so let's get a look at some themes. Oh, Aquarius, you know already. I feel like Pluto in your 12th again is like, I've got unfinished business. Okay, wham bam. Absolutely. The Death card is here to pull you into some transformative experience. I certainly see that being true with all of the planets hanging out in all of your Earth signs, or rather, all of your Earth houses, all of your dark houses, earthy houses, being lit up this month by all these trines happening between the Sun in Virgo in your 8th house to Pluto, to Jupiter and Uranus hanging out in your 4th. So there's absolutely some sort of deep, let's say you've been in a deep transformation, right? With Pluto spending 16 years in your 12th house, with Uranus having been in your 4th house for about 4 or 5 years now, and Jupiter being there since May. So there's absolutely already been some activation of this space. Mars has been moving through here for the past several weeks. So this transformation has already begun, or has already been catalyzed, or at least is familiar to you, okay? You have felt those inklings. Now, I mentioned those dark houses. And yes, the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th houses are all dark houses. And what that means is they are private. They are kind of unseen by many others. The 4th house is the most visible dark house. These are all houses of endings, and that's kind of where some phase of us ends and some new phase of us begins. Some sort of transformation takes place in that house, some sort of alchemy. So the 4th house is home and family. And again, Uranus has been there for years now, and Jupiter has been there for months now. And the 12th house is endings, right? Where I said Pluto's hanging out. And that's where the old parts of us die away before a planet enters our first house and shows us who we are becoming in this new cycle. And the 8th house being lit up by the sun, the new moon, and this Mercury retrograde are hanging out in this like deep kind of psychological space where you bond with other people, where you are tethered to others, right? And So something is being, again, catalyzed. I'm guessing it's already been catalyzed. Something is kind of like being extracted from you in some sense, okay? And there's something that you're moving through that is done for you. Maybe it feels terrifying. Maybe it feels uncertain. I think that's really the feeling, and the fear that comes up with the death card is not that we think like, oh God, I'm dying, or like, oh God, something is, I'm going to lose something that's really important to me. It's more so the uncertainty of what lies beyond this period of chaos. It's like, okay, so I'm going to go through this and I don't know what's on the other side. That's not something I want to volunteer for. And that's often where we tend to avoid the death card, because we don't know where we're going to land, all right? We literally can't see beyond this kind of like asteroid and fireball. And that's the scary part. We can't help but climb the stairs. We can't help but ascend, but we can't see where the stairs go. So you are moving through this month, this Virgo season. If you've been avoiding it, it's time. If you've been acknowledging it, know that like this is happening, okay? Like we're finishing some things up. We are like in the thick of it now. Okay. Whew. Cool. All right. So I love seeing some of these kind of brighter energies coming through. The Eight of Pentacles shows us that you are getting into a rhythm with something. This doesn't need to be, I'm perfecting the formula and making that cash. It can be. It can be a time of, oh, I have really like stuck the landing with this. I have really nailed the, all this. Again, Mars has been in Virgo, right? Mars has been in Virgo this whole time, kind of testing things out, kind of trying out different solutions, seeing what's going to be the most productive. And so, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so what happens in the 8 is we finally found the formula that works. We finally found the method to the madness that helps us organize the results that we're seeking. So again, that can be some productive thing you're doing to make money. It can, it's your 8th house, right? We're trying to like get that cash, get that support, help me help you. It could also just be something else tangible, your routine. Maybe you've been moving through this death energy and it's been calling to your attention like what needs to be streamlined in your day or in your world. Maybe you've organized, okay? But this is some kind of fulfillment of our expectations. We are now capable of repeating these results and getting something predictable over time. Page of Swords feels like I'm getting a connection to death here. This idea of I am opening to new truths, to new ideas, to new facts, to new possibilities. It's not the knight who is ready to go pursue those things that I just mentioned, but it's more the inkling that arises, the kind of the hairs that stand on the back of your neck, and you're like, oh, I'm onto something big here, and this could really open up my world. So there's absolutely some connection between what's fading away and what is being opened up. But there's also some element as well of, because I'm able to kind of routinize these things, because I'm able to get consistent results now, I can start to think about what else is possible or what else might be true around me, right? The swords are our mind, our mentality, our headspace, and our attitude about things, right? And so it's really just this sense of being ready to maybe open up the psychic floodgates because something has fallen away or is dying away and we've grounded in some way, and we've stabilized. We're ready to kind of test the limit. This is what I know, and I know that there's actually more beyond that, and I'm ready to start looking at what that might be. I love an ending with the Empress. Like, hello. Who doesn't want to hang out with Venus, right? And speaking of, Venus is stationing direct in this Virgo season, which thank goodness, because hanging out in your 7th house has really messed with how you're able to connect with people. Those one-on-one relationships that are really important to you, have been really important to you, have probably been disappointing in some way. And that's not to blame the other people, but it's just, again, Venus has been so dried out that she hasn't had anything to give. And that means that you haven't been receiving that 7th house, like, fulfillment that we all need, right? Like, whether or not we have planets there, we need fulfillment in that sense. And if we do have planets there, Venus has probably been relaying messages to you about kind of like what they're experiencing in this house right now. So it's lovely to see this idea that you're moving through this deeply purging time that may or may not be like terrifyingly uncertain in where you're going to land. But in the meantime, you are stabilizing something, right? We're nearing the end of the suit. We are mastering this story. We are opening up to new things, and we're feeling grounded in a way that not only are we able to tap into the resources that we possess, but we are able to provide those for others. That's beautiful, Aquarius. You are someone who thinks about other people, who wants to be some sort of facilitator for big ideas, collective empowerment, evolution, right? And so it's important for you to be fertile in this sense, or to feel connected to whatever that kind of fertility looks like for you. And again, this makes a lot of sense for you having dark houses that are earthy, right? Those most private parts of you are the grounded parts, and it's important for you to tend to those before you can be out here kind of communicating Aquariusness to us, revolutionizing our minds. It's really important for you to be grounded and nurtured, and to know that you're grounded and nurtured and that you have all of this to give. You know, like, you can be a playground for the collective, but if you're not also enjoying some of these fruits, you are kind of like Venus in Leo retrograde right now. Like, you are tapped out, you don't have anything extra to give, and there may be some, I don't know, disconnect happening in what you offer others, whatever that looks like. So I love that this dice just like needed to escape. Okay, number 1, that's you. Okay, you're number 1, Aquarius. Like, let's think about that first house. Pluto, currently in Capricorn, is absolutely like it has already moved into your first house. It may be what initiated this death cycle that is now like needing to be wrapped up, right? It peeked right into your first house for a second, like, hello, I'm coming, sneak preview. And so there's absolutely a lot that I need you to focus on regarding yourself, however selfish that may feel, knowing that you're an Aquarius and thinking about the collective again, and like, could it really be important for me to consider myself? I know all of us like outer signs are like, I don't know how to do that. So do that. Do that. That's where we're seeing kind of the Hermit and the Chariot. Like, it's time for you to go into those dark houses, to spend time with yourself, to see what's awakening. This gives me very 8th house vibes. Mercury retrograde. What else is in here? What else could I be opening up to? And what kind of signals am I receiving? What does that look like? I want to get curious about that. And ultimately leading you to this point of realigning those instincts, right? Those emotional instincts. We're looking at kind of intellectual instincts, emotional instincts, and recognizing that you are as important as the world you signed up to be in. You are as important as everyone you're trying to help or open minds for, you know? And let's bring in Neptune, totally. So we talked about that happening in your 2nd house, the Sun opposing Neptune at I believe the let me remember correctly. We have the Sun opposing Neptune at the end of Virgo season, and we'll have the Moon opposing Neptune in that new moon phase, right? When the new moon happens, the Moon will be the first one to have that opposition to Neptune, and in time passing beyond that, the Sun will follow through, like I described, and kind of make conscious what that opposition is bringing. So from your 2nd house to your 8th house, it may absolutely be that some of these Page of Swords, this what my mind is opening up to, what's becoming possible now, it interacts with this Neptune feeling of like, oh my God, but can I do that? Can I believe that? am I going to have enough for myself if I open this up or tap into that? And I think it's really important to observe that, like, these oppositions in general, and just kind of get a sense of where it connects to this death energy of like, I don't know what's on the other side, and so I'm skeptical or I'm scared of pursuing this, but I also know that I can't continue on not doing this or avoiding this or ignoring this. Okay, you got your homework, Aquarius. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Please like it, share, and subscribe. I'd love to see you come back and talk about Libra season and all of the activity taking place in your 9th house. All right, I want to hear about these revelations. Okay, so I hope to see you then. Hello, Pisces. It's time to get a look at your month ahead. So, as we explore Virgo season, we are seeing the full moon and this opposition to Saturn, as well as these oppositions to Neptune, happening in your 1st house of self, how you move through the world. This North Node in Aries transit is happening in your 2nd house of personal resources, of values and skills. We have Jupiter and Uranus preparing to retrograde in your 3rd house of the mind, the immediate environment, the neighborhood, and our siblings. Venus is preparing to station direct in your 6th house of time, routine, and the body. We have the Sun, the new moon, and Mercury preparing to station retrograde, moving through your 7th house of one-on-one relationships, romantic, business, friend, and enemy. Mars is finishing up in your 7th house and preparing to move into your 8th house of shared resources, of psychology, of deep bonds. And lastly, Pluto is retrograde back in your 11th house of hopes and dreams for the future, community, friends, and grandchildren. Okay. So let's go ahead and pull some cards to get a sense of what we are going to be moving through this season. And we're looking at these cards through the lens of the Chariot and the Hermit, our card for the year and our card for the season, respectively. The Chariot reminding us that we are realigning our conscious and unconscious energies, and the Hermit inviting us to travel within to find answers. Okay, and we also have our fluorite dice here today, and we'll roll those to get an idea of what else we need to know. Okay, well, how interesting is this, Pisces? All right, we've got 2 knights, we've got a major, and we've got a 10. Okay, so these 2 knights, are they you? Are they you and another? Let's maybe imagine that they're you and another, or they are different facets of who you are to others, since we've got all this activity happening in your 7th house. Okay, especially Mercury retrograde. Mercury rules that house, and so Mercury might be rethinking how it is we engage with other people. And looking at these other 2 cards, I'm like, oh, we need some space. Okay, like the Knight of Pentacles is like, I'm working hard, okay? I am doing this tangible work for some cause, myself, someone else. Knight of Cups is, I'm doing this emotional work. I want to show you how I feel. I want to demonstrate emotionally, like, all the beauty that I can show you. This is a really beautiful combination of cards, but if I was like, if everything was maybe direct right now, this could be a super cute time. But knowing that there's a million planets retrograde at this point, we're maybe rethinking what this looks like. What do you do for other people, Pisces? If I think about you being a Pisces, I imagine it's a lot. Pisces do a lot of emotional work. Pisces are thinking a lot about other people. That Virgo 7th house might be working so hard, Knight of Pentacles, to like prove to someone how much they are loved, to give someone in need something valuable or important. There's so much that a Pisces, like all of your social houses are earth houses, right? So like the 11th house of community and friends, the 3rd house of neighborhood and environment, the 7th house of my one-on-one relationships. Like, those are all the spaces in which we connect with other people and we converse, we share. And so I'm imagining that you do a lot for the people you care about, okay? And that is absolutely beautiful, ultimately. But if something's out of line in how you do that and how you offer that to people, I'm seeing this invitation to take a look, because the chrysalis is like, oh, time to go inside, right? I love this connection. We've got Virgo and like kind of, sometimes it's Neptune, sometimes it's Pisces, but we have this kind of like, oh, it's time to go inside now. No one else outside me has these answers. Only I can go within and do this process. So it might be that you are invited to go within right now to the chrysalis to kind of deconstruct some of these roles that you play so that you can listen to the answers that only you have, right? I think that's why Mercury is retrograde in your 7th house. I'm not listening to other people right now. I have to go listen to myself, right? And we have the full moon happening in your 1st house, which is like a time to rest. It's like I'm illuminating what is clear in my body. What have I been carrying, right? So that full moon in your 1st house is kind of trying to illuminate where there's maybe too much emotional responsibility. We talked about that conjunction to Saturn as the moon is becoming full. Maybe it's just too much responsibility right now. Saturn in the 1st house is exhausting. It's a depletion of your energy. It's slowing you down to take the time to form yourself. And that feels very chrysalis. The 10 of Wands is a sign that if we don't put something down at some point, this is gonna burn down the entire tree. Okay, so this is our passion, right? This is our this is like where we show people what we love. Okay, this is what guides us. This is what drives us. When we think about the 9 of Wands before this, we're thinking about how only I carry the torch for this in this way. So if I want this to grow and continue the way that I envision, I'm gonna have to be the one who commits to that. The 10 is like, oh, I've overcommitted. Oh, I can't actually even hold on and endure and carry that torch because the torch might destroy me. The torch is going to burn me. I don't have the energy to sustain or contain all of this. And so the 10 is this, again, this like request to put something down. So I like that we've got kind of some nice like balance here in terms of the elements we're looking at. This is a very airy card, you know, it's got these clouds, and it's certainly about like being suspended in some way. So we can kind of imagine that it's playing the role of an air card right now, even though it might be a bit more watery in its true nature. So I want you to think about what it is you can put down. What roles are you ready to step out of? Let's roll these dice and get a better sense of what we've got. Oh, all right. That one was ready to pop out. Let's talk about Venus, who is, I was thinking about Venus, finishing up that retrograde in your 6th house. And like, you're tired. Venus retrograde in your 6th house is like, I don't have time for that. I don't have the energy for that. And if you've got planets in there, that retrograde is making those planets even more tired. So 9, looking at your 9th house. Okay, Mars is moving there, right? No, I'm sorry, Mars is moving into your 8th house. So no one's hanging out in your 9th house right now. But Mars is moving into your 8th house, ruling that 9th house. So Mars moving into that 8th house space might be kind of needing to sever ties or orchestrate something in a different way, advocate for something in what we share with others. And when we see this Capricorn here, I'm looking to your 11th house, which I mentioned, where Pluto's hanging out. And again, like friendships, am I able to live up to all of this? What friendships are like done, right? Pluto finishing up, trying to wrap up, like, where do you give your power away? Where do you feel like you don't have enough power in your friend or community spaces? How do you feel like people are seeing you or witnessing you? And again, connecting that to those houses, right? That sense of This is where I connect with people. This is where I communicate and share. What are you like done being responsible for in that sense? Like, are people taking care of you in the same way that you're taking care of them? Is there mutuality in these and reciprocity in these arrangements? Or is it time to go inside and deconstruct some of what you have been doing for others and who you've been for others to see like who is still there on the other side, right? And that can absolutely be like disappointing for us Pisces people who really, again, like emotionally invest in caring for the people we love. But if we're doing so from a place that we can't sustain, then we're not helping anybody, right? And they're still going to be disappointed if we can't fulfill something. And so if there's genuine disappointment or like just an incompatibility happening, if you can't continue to be this to someone, then that's a sign that that person's not caring for you in a way that is going to be helpful to you when you need help, because we all need help, right? And Pisces want to help everyone else, but when a Pisces needs help and they don't trust the ability to call on that help, that's really harmful and painful. So okay, Pisces, you've got your forecast, you've got your homework. It's time to go inside, okay? Because we're realigning those emotional like instincts, and that's super important for you as an emotionally guided person to be able to move more successfully and fluidly and fed, right? And sustainably, okay? Pisces, thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please like it, share it, and subscribe. I'd love to have you come back next season and talk about all the activity happening in your 8th house. Okay, see you then. Okay, Aries, let's jump into your month ahead forecast. All right, as we are exploring Virgo season, we are looking at the North Node moving through your 1st house of self and how you move through the world. We see Jupiter and Uranus both preparing to station retrograde in your 2nd house of personal resources, values, and skills. We have Venus preparing to station direct, wrapping up that retrograde in your 5th house of children, of true love, of play and affection, and how we express attraction to others. We've got the sun, the new moon, as well as Mercury stationing retrograde, all in your 6th house of time, routine, service, health, and the body. We've got Mars finishing up in that house and preparing to move into your 7th house of one-on-one relationships, business, romantic, friend, or enemy. We have Pluto, who has made its way back into your 10th house of career, legacy, reputation, and last but not least, this Pisces full moon, this opposition to Saturn, as well as the oppositions to Neptune are all happening in your 12th house of what it all adds up to in the end, of me and my maker, and karma, and mental health. Okay, so as we look at the cards we're about to pull, we're going to get a sense of how they tie into this broader narrative here under the card of the year, the Chariot, reminding us that we are realigning our conscious and unconscious energies, as well as this season's card, the Hermit, which will show us where we are invited to go within for the answers that we are seeking now. Okay, so, and we also have these beautiful fluorite dice as always, and we will roll those to get an idea of what else we need to know about this time. Okay, let's see what we got here. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. The Page of Cups is always an inviting card to receive. We're looking at new instincts, new emotions, new creative opportunities, right? It's not the night, so we're not acting on them yet. We're simply receiving. We're kind of opening up to what is possible within our kind of emotional, instinctual landscape. I immediately thought to the full moon in your 12th house, kind of illuminating what's been kind of happening behind the scenes for you, what might be coming to fruition in some way, what kind of like downloads you've been receiving about kind of what situations you're moving through currently. Thinking too about Jupiter and Uranus stationing retrograde in your second house, that house of personal values and resources, and kind of just seeing what do we want to kind of open up to now, what's feeling real and tangible, maybe what we are kind of tuning into ourselves. And I'm thinking about the Hermit here, like I need to tune into myself about what feels right at this time. I need to tune into myself about what is percolating within me, not what is being asked of me outside of me, what I'm being told I should do or want, but really just getting a sense of what feels right inside myself. Okay. And we can think too about Venus stationing direct here and this clarity that may come as she starts to move through that shadow phase, finally getting a sense of what's possible in that space. I love the Six of Wands. That's certainly a time to be celebrated, right? This is not necessarily the community friendship celebration of Three of Cups, where we come together to like emotionally share and bond in what we've accomplished and what we've been through and moved through. But this is like someone is blowing, you know, these are horns. This is a parade. So this is much more a kind of public recognition, whatever that means to you. There's a broader vision here that you are like connected to and that people are recognizing within you. So you're being celebrated for something that you have accomplished, for something that you've created, for something that like you've managed to pull off, perhaps in the throes of all of the retrograde chaos that's been going on. And as Mars starts to make its way into your 7th house, it then becomes able to see that North Node in your 1st house, as I described before in the transit portion of the video. And there may be something there of, you know, Mars being in your 6th house this whole time has been hustle, and Mars loves it there. So, you know, you've probably been getting a lot done. Whether you want to or not is a different question, but that Mars in Virgo is just kind of enduring it, putting in that work and like getting it done with. So when Mars moves into that 7th house, it's finally breaking into the upper part of your chart, breaking through that horizon, if you will, and being in a space where it's able to be visible by other people. Maybe you've been working so hard on something and not knowing what it's doing for you or where it's taking you, right? We've talked about how from Virgo, Mars can't see that North Node. So you might have been like, I'm hustling and I don't know where we're going. I don't know what this looks like, but I hope this is right. Mars entering that 7th house might feel finally able to recognize what it's all been for. So that 7th house too is of those one-on-one relationships again. And so perhaps there is a feeling of a breakthrough, a feeling of a triumph, a feeling of, again, recognition. Finally, people are seeing what I've been working on this whole time. Okay. And there's also Pluto back in your 10th house of reputation, right? And so there may be something that Pluto is finishing up there in that very visible place. Those trines to Pluto happening from Mars, right, before it enters Libra, kind of helping us make a big push from what we've been doing in our day-to-day routine and what it's all meaning in terms of our career or our legacy or our reputation, finally getting a sense of, yes, and this connects in this way, and so I understand what it's all been for, and now I can start talking about it to other people. I love seeing the Knight of Swords. The Knight of Swords is always powerful. It's we're breaking through. Maybe this connects to your 12th house as well. These truths that call to you. There is breaking free of some previous mental limitation and being very driven to pursue truth now. And I mentioned before, the page is not someone who's really acting on anything yet. We're just opening up to what is possible. The Knight, however, is the one who's like, okay, it's time to charge forth. Okay, I have become awakened to truth and to possibilities there, and now I know where I can go. That also makes me think about Mars breaking free from that 6th house. Again, it loves it there, but it is kind of getting into a space where it's able to socialize again with other people. That 7th house space, again, of one-on-one relationships. And thinking about, you know, again, that Aries North node in your first house. It's really there to help bring you a deeper sense of who you are and what kind of Aries power you are capable of. So as Mars makes this shift into your 7th house where it can see the North node, you may say, oh, this is where I've been. Okay, this is what's up. I finally see where to go, right? Again, the Knight having that capacity to act now. That Knight might say, okay, I know where I want to be moving. I know where I want to seek out new information. I know who I want to talk to. I know what sources I want to consult. I know where I want to travel, whether literally or metaphysically or through knowledge and education, right? That's all very 9th house things. So thinking about, this Knight of Swords and like some sort of breakthrough or the beginning of a journey of this sort. And of course, with the Ace of Swords here, there's new truth coming in. Again, Ace, similar to the Page, nothing's happening with this truth yet. And you may have heard me say before that the Ace is maybe the best card in the suit of the swords because it's fairly neutral. It's just that energy is emerging. There is new insight. There are new downloads. There is something sudden that we must explore or like make space for, right? After this is where we get to the 2 and we have to make choices, and that feels tricky because we don't know how to integrate, but we're not there yet, okay? So I really appreciate that we've got these particular cards here for this sort of groundedness that is happening, or to bring some groundedness rather to what is otherwise some unstable energy. I'm seeing you really like wake up to something important. And I'm called to think about how Mars moving into your 7th house is ruling your 8th house, right? And that is certainly that psychological landscape that we've maybe inherited from another, right? That's where we're kind of like familial psychology, like family systems, right? All of us come from something. None of us is just independently who we are without being shaped by what we emerged from. And that idea of like shared resources in that 8th house space. And so there's something that happens in that 7th house space that may begin to channel into or funnel into that 8th house space that we aren't able to necessarily see yet, right? Mars is next door at this point. So let's go ahead and get an idea of what else we need to know here. And while I roll, let's think about how these tie into this broader narrative. Absolutely, instincts, new ideas, new truths, connecting with both the Chariot and the Hermit. I like that the Knight of Swords is here and it's inviting you into your own journey of truth seeking. The Hermit, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, is about going within ourselves for answers, not necessarily listening to or being guided by the answers of anyone else outside of us, but recognizing that right now, with all these planets retrograde, with Mercury being retrograde on the first day of Virgo season and for most of the season itself, we're not looking for this like external validation, although it's very nice. Like, it is very good to have this validation that can be helpful, but otherwise we're looking at things within you, right? And the more you are going within you to seek these truths, the more that's helping you become more aware of what's happening in that unconscious space. And that's where I think about that 8th house and being ruled by Mars. Okay, that's really funny that I said that feels like 9th house vibes, because Sagittarius is your 9th house. Maybe we look back to Jupiter, who's going to station retrograde in your 2nd house, and Jupiter can't see that Sagittarius house for any of us, okay? Taurus can't see Sagittarius in our charts, period. So it might be that something you are developing as a talent or a skill may call you to explore some new truth, to do some traveling, whether literally or through books, through knowledge, through observing other cultures. Something in that 9th house space is calling to you. Something Sagittarian is calling to you. Mercury. Okay, yep. So Mercury is going to be retrograde in your 6th house, ruling your 6th house as well as your 3rd house. And so Mercury makes me think about learning, about reading, about studying, maybe studying a subject. Again, I'm thinking back, you know, Mercury's going to trine Jupiter, right before Jupiter stations retrograde, if you recall. And so Mercury in your 6th house may be asking you to take on some opportunity in that 2nd house to develop some skills. And maybe that comes through again, like this learning center here. 4, okay, that makes me think about your 4th house, which is Cancer, typically, and that's ruled by the moon. Okay, and if I think about this full moon happening in your 12th house, that's certainly going to be ruling that 4th house space from the 12th, while also trining it because it's in Pisces. And so there may be some connection for you to look at there about how your 12th house themes, right, that deep unconscious space, what it all adds up to, might tie into your 4th house space, which is where it all began, which is where I came from in terms of my lineage, my homeland, etc. Something to think about. Okay, thank you so much, Aries, for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please like it, please share, please subscribe. And I would love to see you next season when we talk about all of the Libra activity, and that'll be lighting up your 7th house. All right, see you then. Hello, Taurus. Let's dive into your month ahead forecast. All right, so as we are looking at Virgo season, we are seeing Jupiter and Uranus both preparing to station retrograde in your 1st house of self and how you move through the world. We have Venus preparing to station direct and finishing up that retrograde in your 4th house of home, origin, homeland, family, emotional body. We have the Sun, the new moon, and Mercury stationing retrograde in your 5th house of true love, of children, of self-expression. We have Mars finishing up in that 5th house and moving into your 6th house of time, routine, health, and the body, and service. Pluto is retrograde in your 9th house of faraway travels, culture, higher learning, religion, philosophy. The full moon, as well as the opposition to Saturn and those oppositions to Neptune, are taking place in your 11th house of hopes and dreams for the future, grandchildren, friends, and community. And lastly, we have the North Node in Aries moving through your 12th house of what it all means, karma, mental health, etc. Okay, so as we look at these cards we're about to pull, we'll do so through the lens of, or under the umbrella of, the Chariot, our card for the year, reminding us that we are realigning our instincts, unconscious and conscious, as well as this season's card, the Hermit, which shows us where we are invited within to seek answers within ourselves. Okay. And as always, we've got our handy dice here to help us take a look at whatever else we need to know about this time. Well, you would have a bunch of pentacles, wouldn't you? Oh my, okay. Okay, you little grounded Taurus. So beautiful. All right, so yeah. This first card, this 7 of Pentacles, is making me think about the planet stationing retrograde in your 1st house. Right? Jupiter's been amplifying you in some way, while Uranus has been forcing you into changes. You might be surprised by how you move through the world. You may have things emerging within you never knew were there. So with both of them stationing retrograde, there's a sense of assessment happening. How are things going? Do I like what I'm seeing? This is Jupiter's travel through your 1st house, like every, this is the I said that sentence so strangely. Okay, bloop, 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 bloop. Jupiter travels through your 1st house approximately every 12 years or so, right? Jupiter spends about a year in a sign. It retrogrades for a few months in the summer. Sometimes it goes back to a sign, to the sign before. Right now, it is just hanging out in Taurus. So you are kind of experiencing a whole year straight of Jupiter hanging out in your 1st house. And so it's likely been bringing you some sense of what's possible for you. How do I want to be? How do I want to show up? What allows me to feel big? What allows me to take up space? What allows me to feel like I'm perhaps a leader of some sort? And so that's a lot of energy. It's a lot of energy happening in the 1st. So you might be at a point where you are able to take a step back and think about, all right, of these things I've been juggling, like which ones are starting to add up to something meaningful, which ones are not really growing, right? I like to think about this as, you know, these are the berries in my garden. Are some of them growing in kind of stunted, or are they rotting before I can get to them? What kind of issues am I experiencing with my crop right now, to get really earthy with you, Taurus? And like, what's feeling good? What's growing well? From here, we move into the 8 where we systemize things. So we take whatever formula is working that we've tested out in 7, and we apply it to sort of our ongoing operations in the 8. We start to streamline that process. So you are in a period of getting a sense of what things look like for you and how that feels. The King of Pentacles might be, look at these 2 kings together. So the King of Pentacles might be asking you if you feel kind of grounded in your resources at this time. And if we know that Venus has been retrograde for a million weeks at this point, and that's your chart ruler, there may be a sense of, I don't have the resources I need at home, right? That 4th house of home, emotional body. I haven't been nourished there. I've been so stripped, I've been so exhausted that I'm really detached from being able to kind of take responsibility for not just my own resources, but the other commitments I have signed up for, the other commitments I have agreed to be responsible for. So I want you to take a lot of care there as you assess, oh, what do I want to step into? Remember that Venus has been squaring Jupiter from your 4th house to your 1st house, and it might be that Jupiter out here in the 1st house is like, look at me, and Venus from the 4th house is like, I don't have energy for you to be out here like this. Actually, it's like, maybe if the situation were more ideal, maybe when Venus stations direct, right, which we talked about she's about to do finally. And so maybe there's some conversation here about what you're able to commit to at this time, what you're able to be responsible for, and whether or not you like want to. Does that feel good, right? We always talk about how the court cards themselves, as part of the suit, are roles that we play for ourselves and for other people. And so how does that feel right now? King of Wands is feeling pretty Jupiter to me as well. If I think about Jupiter ruling that full moon, right? All that Pisces energy in your 11th house. And so it might be that we're tapping into some visions about what we want for the future, especially as we're assessing what has been kind of coming up for us now and thinking about what we want and what feels good and what's working out for us. We might be able to connect to something bigger about like, oh, and then this is what I hope to be able to tap into for my hopes and dreams of the future, but also like how I want to kind of guide others. I said leader earlier in terms of Jupiter, and that feels, the 11th house space is like I am kind of recognized by community and I'm able to lead others through my vision. And I love the King of Wands for that. I can show you how to get to what you are trying to do. I can show you the steps to pursue this dream. So even though Venus is tired, even though we might be putting down some of these responsibilities, maybe it feels good to step into this role instead. Maybe we can switch it up a bit. Which one is feeling better, right? What formula is working, what formula is not. Kind of cool to see the 6 of Pentacles here, where we see ourselves making things right somehow. Putting things back into balance. And you may know this card traditionally as kind of like a card of charity. And maybe that is something that's happening. Maybe you're able to give something to someone, or maybe you're able to ask for something from someone, right? Maybe you are one of the hands that feels like, okay, I can reach out and take one of these oranges. That feels good to me. And really what I envision for this card is about community access, is about people having resources that are not about a hierarchy necessarily, even though we still very much live in a society and a system that is obsessed with hierarchy. Maybe we're figuring out how to kind of spread things out in a way that don't deplete us or that don't require us to, maybe I'm coming back to this King of Pentacles here, like, what have I been taking responsibility for? Where have I been the tree or the mountain? And like, where can I like take from the tree? Actually, I'm hungry, right? That Venus again needs nourishment right now to be able to even rule your chart. So let's take a look at what the dice have to say. And thinking about how Venus is in your 4th house, that is a dark house, and that is making me think about the Chariot. I'm guessing that this Venus retrograde time has been very illuminating to you about what you can be responsible for, and maybe where that depletes your ability to create a vision or tap into that power. Thinking about the Hermit, you're going within yourself to figure out what feels good. You're the one assessing. No one else can decide for you. You're assessing. You're the one deciding what feels right, and you're deciding what you might need at this time. Okay, and you have the answers for that. So that feels really empowering. Okay, Capricorn, your 9th house. All right. So yeah, Pluto's up there, right? Pluto's up there making you think about who am I in the grand scheme of the world that I live in? Who am I when I think about the philosophies I've lived by up to this point? What changes have I been seeking in terms of how I feel culturally about myself, what spaces I learn from, what kind of people I meet in order to kind of come to a sense of meaning about things? And since that's part of your sort of houses of life, right? 1, 5, 9, and they're all being activated right now. Mars finishing up in your 5th house is making that trine to Pluto up there in the 9th house before it moves into your 6th. And the planets in your 1st house are certainly in a broader conversation with Pluto. It's a broad orb, but it's still present. And all those planets that we talked about, the Sun, the new moon, and Mercury moving through your 5th house, and Mercury retrograde in your 5th house, are all considering how you express yourself. How do I offer love to people? What does that look like? And so it might be very important to tune into that Pluto energy of how I think I fit in the broad scope of things, to get a sense of what Mercury wants to understand in the 5th house of how we express ourselves. The moon, as I just mentioned. Okay. And so that Pisces new moon, I just talked about this big King of Wands vibe, right? And this 11th house energy of, I want to show and demonstrate all that I see, and how I can guide you to all that you see. And this one, the 1st house, I think that 1st house energy is super important. And let's emphasize the one as well, as you need to focus on you right now. Perhaps, right? Venus, again, finishing up that retrograde, ruling your chart from the 4th house. It's time to start giving that Venus what she's been so blocked from, what she's been, like, it's time to, like, wet her. I'm thinking about like a dried sponge. Like, she's been out in the sun this whole time. She's so crispy. It's time to give her a little love, and in that sense, yourself a little love. And I think that's bringing me back to the 6 of Pentacles of, like, I give a lot in these areas, and it's time for me to take some. It's time for me to take some of what I need. It's my turn. Okay, Taurus, it's your turn. I hope that you have gotten something insightful from this. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like it, please share, please subscribe. I'd love to see you back here next time, where we talk about all of the Libra season activity happening in your 8th house. Okay, so we will see you soon. Hello, Gemini. It's time for your Virgo season forecast. And as we look at Virgo season, we are looking at Venus retrograde finishing up in your 3rd house of the mind, our immediate environment, our neighborhood, our siblings, our peers. We see the Sun, the new moon, and Mercury stationing retrograde in your 4th house of family, origin, emotional body, and home. We have Mars finishing up in that 4th house and preparing to move into your 5th house of self-expression, true love, children, play. We have Pluto currently retrograde in your 8th house of shared resources, of contracts. The full moon, that opposition to Saturn and those oppositions to Neptune taking place in your 10th house of legacy, career, reputation. The North Node in Aries moving through your 11th house of hopes and dreams for the future, community, and friends. And lastly, we have Jupiter and Uranus both preparing to station retrograde in your 12th house of what it all adds up to, of karma, of mental health. Okay, so as we look at the cards we're going to pull, we're going to do so under the umbrella of the Chariot, reminding us that we are aligning or realigning our conscious and unconscious energies, as well as this season's Hermit, which is showing us where we are invited to go within to seek answers. And of course, we have our handy dice, which will show us whatever else we need to know about this time. Okay, let's do it. Cute, cute. Ooh, 2s are very you, Gemini. Okay. All right. We've got 2 2s and 2 swords. That's just so fitting for you, you little Gemini twins. Okay, so the 2 of Cups. Who are we chatting with? Okay, what kind of emotions do we want to feel? Maybe this is Mars moving into your 5th house and kind of wanting to like act toward self-expression, toward connecting with people, right? The 5th house of this is how I feel about you and I want to connect with you. I like you. The 2 of Cups is very much an invitation into connection with people. I'm thinking too about Venus wrapping up that retrograde in your 3rd house. And the 3rd house has a very Gemini nature to it. It is a desire to connect, it is a desire to get to know, it is a desire to explore and to ask and to sense and to know and learn about ourselves through our interactions with others. So with Venus having been retrograde there, maybe you've been kind of locked out of or deprived of some of those neighborhood spaces where you're able to kind of meet one-on-one with people. Maybe you've been just isolated a bit from that ability to connect. And maybe that North Node in Aries, right, and the 11th house is also kind of drawing you to connect with people. I want to meet my friends. I want to be seen. I want to be out here and like feel what that's like. So Mars moving into that 5th house again, we'll be able to see that North Node from the 5th house, and it might be able to act in ways to begin serving that North Node in a more conscious way. The 2 of Pentacles is asking you to get back into balance, right? There's something where you might be taking on more or shifting your priorities, and it's important to figure out how to recalibrate what it is that you're doing, right? We want to grow, but in order to grow, we need to also stabilize our roots. We need to make sure that they're nourished. We need to make sure that they're cared for so that we can kind of grow in equal parts in this way and remain balanced and strong. That's making me think about maybe the sun moving through your 4th house and this full moon happening in your 10th house, as well as these oppositions to Saturn in your 10th house, right? Like maybe that's felt really limiting. It's like, okay, at home in the 4th house, I'm tired, but I also need to be doing things out here in the 10th house. I need people to be seeing what I'm doing. Saturn up there is like, I'm working really hard to build this space. And the oppositions are like, I'll never get there. And maybe it's, you know, this push and pull of, how do I anchor myself here in order to really thrive up there? And that's probably what Mercury retrograde is doing in your 4th house. Mercury rules your chart as a Gemini and also rules that 4th house and squares that space. So Mercury down there in the 4th house is like, whoa, 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 whoa. We need to slow our roll because we've been really focusing up here and it's time to focus down here. We need to really get into the roots of things, quite literally. How is my root chakra doing? What do I need for myself here to allow me to show up in the world the way that I want to, right? And maybe that's a part of this 2 of Cups too. Venus again being retrograde and maybe depleting that mental energy, depleting the ability to connect with other people. There might be something here too of, oh, before I do all of that, I need to look at this first. The 6 of Swords tells us that we're moving away from something. Pluto in the 8th, right? Okay, that's where my mind went, especially because the planets in Virgo will move into trine Pluto from the 4th house to the 8th house. And there's absolutely something kind of parting ways there. There's also Jupiter and Uranus stationing retrograde in your 12th house. And maybe there's something, I mean, those are all the houses of endings, okay? 4, 8, 12. So the trines from these spaces, the conversations happening between these three houses are certainly inviting you to let go of something, knowing that there's nothing there for you anymore, knowing that you've done what you can in this journey to do whatever you're capable of, and there's just nothing else for you to put effort into at this time. This is a chance to move away from something that feels limiting or just conflict laden, and know that you're moving towards something more peaceful for yourself. And this 9 of Swords feels kind of like a warning to me. I almost think that, like, if we don't answer this call to move away from something, then perhaps we will end up further into the suit where we feel trapped. Maybe that's some of Jupiter and Uranus up in that 12th house. Maybe there's some fear that if I don't continue what I'm doing, or if I can't get this to grow the way I need to, I'm gonna feel so anxious, so blocked within myself about my capacity, about what I need right now, okay, about being able to accomplish. Let's see what else these dice have to say and get a sense of kind of what else we need to know. But this makes a lot of sense for the Chariot and the Hermit, right? The Hermit literally calling you within yourself in that 4th house, with Mercury being retrograde and saying, like, okay, time to find out within ourselves what we need. And again, those dark houses really making me think about the Chariot. 4, 8, and 12 and all that activity, really awakening anything that's unconscious at this time to make you aware of it, to bring it to your attention, and to help you root into it, to make sure that you are accounting for those things in what you're, providing yourself in order to grow. Okay. All right. Yes. Okay. We have 10 and Pisces. Okay, yep. And so we talked about your 10th house. We talked about Saturn up there, like looming down, and anything down in the 4th house, like, I need you to be better, or like, I need you to step up to what I'm asking of you. And absolutely, like Neptune up there too, those oppositions from that 4th house to that Neptune are really like adding to a feeling of doubt. Will I ever get there? Can I ever accomplish what it is I'm trying to do? I started from the bottom, now we're here. Will I ever get there though? Will I ever get to that destination? So just, I'm seeing the 2 of Pentacles as a bit of an antidote to the 9 of Swords. If there is anxiety coming in, or maybe let's say when there is anxiety coming in, focus on those roots, right? And focus on those roots to help stave away deeper anxiety. And listen to those roots in order to know when it's time to leave. I'm getting a Mars sense from this, right? This is, I just want to like triple check. Okay, yeah, Venus is over here. Yep, Mars has the pointy arrow. I just don't like to misspeak, okay, So Mars energy is separative. Mars cuts away what doesn't work. And I mentioned that Mars will finally be able to see the North Node in Aries in the 11th house. And so it might be that Mars being in contact with the South Node in your 5th house might be saying, I've been offering this to people. And let's remember, Venus rules that space and has been retrograde from your 3rd house. So that 5th house space has also been tired, right? The South Node is there now asking you to release forms of self-expression that no longer serve you. Mars will do that for you, okay? Tap into that Mars energy. Know that what Mars is, and again, listen to those roots, right? And from there, know that Mars can pull you away from things that are no longer serving you, that are no longer providing for you, or that might be worsening this feeling of anxiety, right? And I think all of that is to help you strengthen that 5th house and that Libra space, so that you can connect with people more authentically as who you are, not all of the, not from a place of being pressured, okay? That's really important. Okay, Gemini, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please like it, please share, please subscribe. I would love to see you come back next time and we can talk about more happening in that Libra 5th house as we move into Libra season. All right, see you then. Hello, Cancer. Let's talk about your Virgo season. So, as we are exploring Virgo season, we are looking at Venus preparing to station direct in your 2nd house of personal values, resources, and skills. We've got the Sun, the new moon, as well as Mercury and its imminent retrograde hanging out in your 3rd house of immediate environment, siblings, the mind, our neighborhood, our peers. Mars is finishing up in that house and preparing to move into your 4th house of home, family, origin, emotional body. Pluto is wrapping up this retrograde in your 7th house. Well, it's not wrapping up its retrograde, it's wrapping up its journey in Capricorn, rather, in your 7th house of one-on-one relationships, business, friendly, romantic, enemy. The full moon, that opposition to Saturn and those oppositions to Neptune are happening in your 9th house of other cultures, faraway travel, philosophy, religion, higher learning. The North Node is in Aries in your 10th house of reputation, career, and legacy. And last but not least, Jupiter and Uranus are both preparing to station retrograde in your 11th house of friends, community, hopes, and dreams. And grandchildren if you've got them too. Okay. As we look at the cards we are about to pull, we will do so under the umbrella of Chariot, our card for the year, reminding us that we are realigning our conscious and unconscious energies, as well as the Hermit, our card for the season, asking us to travel within for the answers that we seek now. Okay. So let's go ahead and see what we got. As always, we have our handy dandy dice. They will show us whatever else we need to know at this time. Okay. Ooh, you got the mage. Oh, okay. Okay. You've got 3 mages. And what a nice little Cancer card here with this Ace of Cups. Okay. Wow, 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 wow. Wowzers. What are you going through? What's happening, Cancer? Okay, so there's a lot that's going on here. Temperance is showing us that there's a broader, deeper sense of balance that wants to be acknowledged or tended to at this time, maybe reestablished, right? There's all of the elements here that are present, and we need all the elements in some sort of form of relative balance in order to be able to create all that we are working on, all that we give energy to, in order to alchemize and bring things to, turn one thing into another thing, right? And so where are you out of kind of balance here? Well, let's think about how Venus has been retrograde in your 2nd house, and that's Venus ruling your 4th house of home, right? So where your skills, your personal resources and values have been maybe bare minimum, maybe stripped bare, maybe feeling kind of dried out, is ruling your home space, how you're able to tend to your emotional body, what you have available at home. Let's literally say, like, maybe a pay cut in the 2nd house has made it hard to pay our rent, right? We are in the economy of 2023 and it's wild. So just one idea of what's happening here. It may be that we feel really down about our skills and that's impacting our emotional body, okay? So there's lots of layers that are possible, but there's something that's out of balance, and fortunately Venus is preparing to station direct. And so as she does so, you may feel some sense of relief in that 4th house space, as well as that 11th house space of what's possible for me in the future, right? If this is happening right now and this is impacting me in this moment, then like I'm not looking at the future with the best outlook. So as Venus stations direct, we're able to kind of course correct some of those things and maybe hopefully bring in some deeper balance. The Wheel of Fortune here is quite literally Jupiterian. And Jupiter is stationing retrograde in your 11th house. As I just mentioned, those hopes and dreams for the future, our friends and our communities. So it might be that something that you've been preparing for is now finally ready to move or act, right? And maybe that sounds kind of crazy because, again, everything is retrograde. But it still might be that, you know, I mentioned in the transit portion, Jupiter stationing retrograde is actually where we get to weed out some of what doesn't work for us, some of what's not going to be possible. And so all the prep work you've been doing may lead you to this natural place of being finally ready to act on something. The wheel is spinning for you, Cancer, right? Like maybe all of the rest of us are kind of like, what? But for you, something's ready to go. Let's think too about Mars stationing, nope, not stationing, but moving into rather that 4th house space that I just described and seeing the North Node in your 10th house. And with that new visibility, you may be able to act in ways to make that North Node in your 10th house come to you in a conscious way, right? We've talked about how from Virgo, Mars has been doing the work, but not seeing the results, not seeing what it adds up to. This season may have you actually seeing some manifestation of those efforts finally come into view. And you've been doing this work, and so the wheel spins and you are able to collect that thing, finally. I love the star. It's very Aquarian. This energy of I am emerging as myself. That's beautiful. That's making me think about the full moon in your 9th house and that Pisces space. And Saturn's been up there, right? And like really chiseling away at you. It's been trining your ascendant. It's been like, if you want to like move in that way, you must tighten these ideas or do this studying, right? Saturn in the 9th is very much about maybe some sort of formal study. And so you've been hardened into something, right? You've crystallized into something. The star comes after the tower. We move through something tumultuous and we emerge as ourselves. That's also making me think about Pluto in the 7th. Pluto spent about 16 years in your 7th house, so the bulk of this transformation is done. And it's really the final stages of Pluto wrapping these things up, and maybe even this Mars trine from Virgo to this 7th house Pluto, right? And again, these like the other Virgo trines that will come through, really helping you see where that transformation has really happened and helping you become more comfortable with who you are and stepping into that authenticity with agency. I love that. That's amazing. And here we have Ace of Cups. It's like, I'm ready for new feelings. I'm opening up to new emotions. You are a Cancer rising ruled by the moon, which will be full in your 9th house. So the more you are analyzing how your mind works, thinking about what you've been learning and studying and what meaning you make from it, you may find yourself really tuning into just new emotional possibilities at this time. Feeling really good, maybe, for the first time in a while. Again, Venus stationing direct and like allowing that emotional body, that 4th house, to feel just a little breath of fresh air. The South Node is there extracting things from you. That's a deeply personal place to have the South Node just bring things up to your attention. So as it does that, it is doing so to clear out what doesn't need to be there anymore so that you can tune into new feelings. I love that for you, Cancer. I love new feelings for you. Oh, well. Capricorn needed to be in the chat, so we're emphasizing that 7th house space again and thinking about that Pluto. If you have any planets in that 7th house space, they will be trined by the transits through your Virgo house, that 3rd house, as well as those, they have probably been interacting with the planets in your 11th house in Taurus, right? So really thinking about that 7th house space and how I show up there and what I want to feel in that space moving forward. Okay, who else is here? All right, 12. And okay, yes, Pluto. Pluto's big. I think those trines to Pluto are going to be very impactful. And let's talk about your 12th house. It's Gemini. And one of the few spaces we didn't talk about in this reading, but that is being ruled by Mercury, who will be retrograde in your 3rd house. So whatever Mercury is moving through in that 3rd house and going back over, right? The mind, peers, immediate environment, neighborhood, siblings, whatever is kind of up in the air in that space is absolutely connected to that 12th house space. That whole arc is about things only I see and know and experience, and things I'm able to share with other people immediately around me. And those are pretty divisive. That's a pretty divisive energy, right? We often have a lot of conflict within ourselves about what only we see. And we want to be able to talk to other people about it. We want to be able to like relate to others there, but sometimes it's just our own experience. If you've got planets up there in Gemini, maybe they are going through the same reworking that that Virgo space is undergoing, and you're kind of seeing it, feeling it as a as above so below kind of situation, which feels a bit like temperance in some sense. Just that like recalibrating the balance of what this element does, what this element does. I need a healthy amount of all of them in order to make magic happen. So, okay, looking at all of this through the lens of the Chariot, we absolutely see like these major transformations happening that help you become more aware of that conscious, unconscious drive within you, right? And thinking about the Hermit, again, that third house space of what's being reworked in my mind, my immediate environment, and how does it connect to that 12th house space of karma and the things that only I experience. Okay. Cancer, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please like it, please share, please subscribe. Next season, we'll talk more about that Libra space, and we'll see what the sun is illuminating with the South Node there and what's ready to be purged. See you then. Last but not least, our precious Leo. Step right up. Let's talk about your Virgo season. Okay. When we talk about Virgo season, we are looking at Venus finally stationing direct in your first house of self and how you move through the world. You did it. We have the sun, the new moon, and Mercury, as well as its imminent retrograde, happening in your second house of personal resources, values, and skills. Mars is finishing up in that house and moving into your third house of the mind, the immediate environment, the neighborhood, and siblings. Pluto is retrograde in your sixth house of body, time, and routine, as well as service. The full moon, that opposition to Saturn, and those oppositions to Neptune are happening in your eighth house of shared resources, of contractual arrangements, our boss, our government, our landlord, our spouse. We have the North Node in Aries moving through your ninth house of faraway travel, other cultures, higher learning, religion, philosophy. And we have Jupiter and Uranus both preparing to station retrograde in your 10th house of legacy, reputation, and career. All right. As we look at the cards we're going to pull, we're going to do so under the umbrella of the Chariot, our card for the year, reminding us that we are realigning our conscious and unconscious energies. And the Hermit, our card for the season, inviting us to seek answers within ourselves now. Okay, so let's get a look at what these cards have to say, and we'll also roll our dice, and we'll get a sense of what else we need to know about this time. Okay. Eighth house vibes. Yep. Okay. This is nice, right? So the moon. Yes, I immediately thought about your eighth house, which is where the full moon will hang out with Saturn as well as Neptune. Okay, so what are you experiencing that you are deeply uncertain of? I love the moon, actually. The moon is often a really confusing card, and that's kind of the point. We don't really know what we are seeing. We're not seeing it. And you may have heard me describe this card as kind of like driving through a deep fog at night. And we can feel compelled or an urge to rush through you know, we kind of hate it. We don't really know what's out there, and we don't like that feeling. And so we just want to kind of rush through it to get to whatever the other side of the fog is. But if we do that, we're going to cause an accident because we're in some deep fog. We can't see. So the very thing that is compelling us to run is the very thing that we need to actually slow down and listen to. We often try to escape what's in our deep unconscious, already making some parallels to the Chariot, right? We don't want to know what's in there. It's spooky, it's yucky, there's a spider in there. I don't like that. I don't want to look into my trauma. I don't want to talk about that thing. I don't want to know the whys, because if I do, then I don't trust myself to be able to move through them or recover. And yet we have to. That's the only way we can fully know ourselves. Leo, you are like solar vibes, right? You're like, I'm out here in the sun and I'm doing it and you see me. But like, do you see yourself though? And like, how much of yourself do you not see, and where is that impacting what you think you see about yourself and what you think others see about you? And possibly that Venus retrograde in your first has pulled you back a bit in some way around how I connect with other people and like how it feels and what energy I have. And in some of that, it may have brought up some fog of like, uh-oh, I don't really know where I'm going next. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do now. I'm scared. And that's totally normal and perfectly fine. But use that time, take that time to do that inner searching, right? That's also what the Hermit is. I'm getting Hermit vibes from this too. This idea of go within yourself to seek the answers. Well, I don't like what's in there. Actually, you don't know that is the thing. You don't know if you don't like it. And if anything, what hangs out here in this deep, foggy space is actually our friend. Sometimes I'll refer to Yumi Sakugawa's inviting your teas to demons. No, I said that backwards, your demons to tea. Yumi Sakugawa is an artist, and she's drawn these beautiful illustrations of what it is to get to know our demons. And the things that kind of echo out from us feel scary, but they just want our attention. They just want to be nurtured and loved the same way that we do as babies and humans and people. And as Leos, we want to be loved, right? And so part of that process of being loved is going within and loving what's in there, even if it feels scary. It's part of us. I love this. This feels like, okay, Venus stationing direct. I can start to finally make things again. But I'm also getting the sense that whatever is within this moon space is also like actively tied to your magic powers. And the more you can go in here and tap into what you don't know, the more you can become conscious of what you don't know and make something out of it. You use that power. That 8th house is deeply transformative. People go into that space with you and you're like, let me shine this light on you and bring you peace. Okay, that was a song for you. Come into my mysterious workshop space. Okay, the magic happens in here. You've got these great, beautiful powers of creation. I'm also thinking about the Aries North Node in your 9th house of what do I want to expose myself to in order to kind of like tap into this magic, or where do I want my magic to go? What do I want that to look like? I'm thinking about like mass communicating, right? And this idea of like, where do I want my magic to, what do I want magic to say? What do I want my magic to say? Okay. And then we've got these cups here. This 10 of Cups is very much about emotional fulfillment. Okay, what does that look like for you? Maybe that's some of the retrogrades happening in your 10th house in terms of your reputation, your career, what that looks like. And maybe it's again that Venus in the first stationing direct. There's some energy here. Ooh, I'm getting 9th house North Node vibes again as well, about what's possible and like what you see for yourself. And yeah, if we think about, okay, Saturn's in your 8th house, ruling your 7th house. The full moon is going to be in that 8th house space. Okay, maybe there's something that the full moon is illuminating with Saturn about your maybe one-on-one relationships, or about the emotional bonds you are a part of that allows you to recognize that you've reached a place of fulfillment for yourself. And remembering that the 10 is never like the, you know, it's the end of the soup, but it's not like, okay, I made it to my destination and like that's it. Now I'm happy forever. No, but recognizing in this chapter of your life, you have reached some sort of culmination point, and maybe you've never been here before. Maybe you have been hoping you could get here. Maybe you achieved some milestone of emotional fulfillment that is really meaningful for you. In the Six of Cup energy, maybe this fulfillment, this culmination of this theme is allowing you to reflect back on the past and to think about what was and to understand how it brought you here. Maybe there's a sense of connecting with community here, right? We've had this, we have Mars moving into your 3rd house. Maybe there's some, I want to be part of something. I want to move through these spaces. I want to be connected with what community is doing and what that looks like. But I'm really getting a bigger sense of the first one. Obviously, you know, you let me know, but I'm getting this sense that this fulfillment allows you to look back on something with some sort of, again, closure. Maybe you're able to reconcile some of these, like, I wish things could be like this time. Maybe the last time I was happy was in the past, you know, sometime in the past that I look back on fondly and I wish I could be there, but I'm recognizing actually that for the first time in a long time, I'm someplace really good. So I don't have to dwell on the past, or I can close that door, or I can appreciate that thing now, but not like be trapped in it. Okay, so again, already knowing how this is tying into the Chariot and the Hermit, absolutely. Like knowing more about yourself is the key here. Is like what we are kind of being asked to do in order to know our full capacity. Okay. Pluto hanging out in your 6th house. Yes. What is like the power of your time right now? Is there anything happening in your sense of routine that is frivolous or like pulling away from what you actually need or depleting you in some way? And how can you reconcile that, right? We have Pluto square the nodes right now. You know, it's kind of like a months-long journey. The thick of it was back in July and earlier in August, but they're still within that orb. And so this South Node energy hanging out in your 3rd house, what ideas do you need to clear out? What mentality, or like maybe even how you compare yourself to other people, where does that need to go? Where does that influence how you use your time? And where do you need to pull back on some of that and move more into that 9th house space of what you can open up to learning now at this time? And Cancer. Okay, Leo, that's your 12th house, right? And we always talk about this 12th house space as our mental health space. So paying attention to the moon, right? The full moon in your 8th house, illuminating that psychological material that we inherited from other people because we are not an island. And so what in that 8th house space is maybe impacting your 12th house? Pay attention to that Pisces full moon. Pay attention to what Saturn's doing in the 8th house and think about kind of how it's contributing to what you think everything adds up to in the end in that 12th house manner, okay? All right, Leo, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please like it, please share, please subscribe. I would love to see you come back next season and we'll talk more about the 3rd house releases that you're making and what's being illuminated there for you. Okay, see you then.